Chapter 2057. Ice Lotus Boom. 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 After Zhuowen and Yin Bingyun had plundered most of the resources on the second floor, a terrifying explosion came from the staircase. Looks like the people from the Dark Illusion sect have arrived. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn as he took a step forward and arrived at the staircase. At this moment, the death trap array he had set up at the staircase was shaking violently as if it would shatter at any moment. Zhuowen did not hesitate as he threw out divine artifacts one after another from his spirit ring. There was no lack of void sky divine artifacts among them. Zhuowen had killed many disciples of the top 10 sects on the square of the Tower of Hanoi. Even the strongest geniuses and elders of the top sects such as Lei Qi and Lian Ziyi had died at his hands. Zhuowen was a person who was very particular about making use of trash, and he also had the greedy blood immortal. Therefore, every time he killed someone, the blood immortal would take the spirit ring from the dead person. This also meant that Zhuowen had a lot of divine artifacts on him. Zhuowen threw out almost 100 divine artifacts, which shocked Yin Bingyun. She clearly did not expect Zhuowen to be so rich. Crack. The death trap array was broken the moment the divine artifacts were thrown out. Then, a white-haired elder with a vast aura rushed out with a group of cultivators. Bastard, who are you? What is your purpose in intruding into the Dark Illusion sect? The white-haired elder rushed out and his eyes fell on Zhuowen as he gnashed his teeth. Unfortunately, what the white-haired elder saw was Zhuowen's mocking smile and the almost 100 divine artifacts whistling towards him. Explode. Zhuowen exhaled softly. Close to 100 god artifacts were detonated by him. Terrifying explosions surged out, followed by dazzling heat waves. Retreat. The white-haired elder's expression changed greatly, but his reaction was not slow. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a small bronze cauldron from his spirit ring. With a flash of green light, the small bronze cauldron immediately transformed into a large round cauldron that blocked the entrance of the staircase. Unfortunately, the energy from the explosion of almost 100 divine artifacts was too terrifying. The small bronze cauldron only blocked it for a moment before it was completely shattered by the terrifying explosion. The white-haired elder and the group behind the small bronze cauldron roared as they used their various abilities to block the explosion energy. At the same time, they kept retreating backwards in an extremely sorry state. As the white-haired elder and the others retreated, Zhuowen set up many formation discs at the entrance of the staircase. He had prepared this time. He had obtained many formation discs from the fortune trading company. These array discs didn't require too much time to set up. They could immediately set up the required array formations. After setting up the discs, Zhuowen led Yin Bingyun. He led Yin Bingyun to the third floor. By Zhuowen he had obtained such great gains from the first 2 levels of the Nether Pavilion, so the resources on the third level would definitely be even greater. So, there was no reason for him to give up on the third level and leave the Nether Pavilion. Hey! There's a restriction on the third staircase. The moment he stepped onto the third staircase, an invisible ripple immediately blocked Zhuowen, causing Zhuowen to frown slightly. There were no restrictions on the first 2 staircases, but there was one on the third floor. Zhuowen knew that there must be something extremely important to Yu Wuxi on the third floor. Xiaohei, don't hold back. Break this restriction directly. Zhuowen knew that it was too late to break the restriction now. Time was of the essence, so he could only break it with brute force. Xiaohei naturally knew the severity of the situation. She nodded, and the surface of the Thunderfire sword exploded with terrifying lightning and fire energy. At the same time, Zhuowen's original body took out 64 beginning demonic golden swords, while the black-clothed Zhuowen unleashed all the extreme lightning energy in his body. Together with the heaven-devouring demonic tome, they formed a terrifying heaven-devouring lightning. Rumble. The combined power of the 3 almost shook the heavens and the earth. The entire Nether Hall shook violently. On the first floor of the Nether Hall, the white-clothed old man and the others had barely managed to block the explosion of the divine artifact. They immediately felt the terrifying tremors. Oh no, what did that intruder do up there? The white-clothed old man roared angrily and immediately rushed to the second staircase. Unfortunately, the trap and kill array immediately blocked the white-clothed old man's path. The white-clothed old man roared angrily. Gathering the power of the cultivators behind him, he forcefully destroyed the trap and kill array and entered the second floor. Seeing that the second floor was almost empty, the white-clothed old man's face turned extremely ugly. Then, he saw Zhuowen and the others had already broken the restriction and entered the third staircase. "Come back here." The white-clothed old man roared and chased after them like a ferocious tiger. Zhuowen, however, laughed out loud. He actually threw out close to 100 divine artifacts from his spirit ring, which instantly exploded. "Ah, damn brat, you're using this trick again." Seeing the nearly 100 divine artifacts exploding, the white-clothed old man forcibly stopped himself and retreated instead of advancing. He resisted the explosion of the divine artifacts with the other cultivators. The white-clothed old man's lungs were about to explode from anger. He had fallen for that brat's trick again and again. This almost drove the white-clothed old man mad. At the same time, the white-clothed old man was shocked. How could this brat have so many divine artifacts on him? How much courage did he need to detonate so many divine artifacts at once? The space on the third floor was not big, but there was a bone-chilling coldness. Zhuowen set up many array discs at the entrance of the staircase. At the same time, he hid 10 void sky divine artifacts within the array disc's trap and kill array. He knew that once he reached the third floor, he would have to face the white-clothed old man and the others. If he wanted to escape alive, he would have to face the group of dark fantasy sects experts. Therefore, he did not hesitate to take out all his void sky divine artifacts. These 10 void sky divine artifacts were all top grade. He had obtained them from Lei Qi, Lian Ziyi, Wei Shuo, and the other geniuses. The power of 10 void sky divine artifacts exploding at the same time was much more terrifying than the previous ones. Moreover, the void sky divine artifacts were hidden within the trap and kill array. If the white-clothed old man and the others did not know what was good for them and tried to force their way through the trap and kill array, they would have to face the explosion of the void sky divine artifacts. After setting up the trap and kill array, Zhuowen began to examine the scenery on the third floor of the nether hall. There were 9 huge icicles erected here. At the center of the 9 icicles was a crystal clear ice lotus. The surface of this ice lotus was cold and dense. Its petals were as transparent and flawless as ice. The bone-chilling coldness on the third floor came from this ice lotus. Moreover, this ice lotus was quite large. It was about 10 feet wide. The stamen at the center of the blooming petals looked more like a praying mat. Zhuowen glanced at the ice lotus and then looked around. He discovered that there was nothing on the third floor other than this ice lotus and the 9 icicles around it. "What is this thing?" Zhuowen muttered with a frown. "Who cares what it is? Since this thing is placed on the third floor of the nether hall and is even protected by restrictions, it's probably the most precious thing of the Serene Mirage sect's ancestor. Hurry up and take it away," Xiao He hurriedly said. Zhuowen nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he planned to put the ice lotus into his spirit ring. But the moment his power approached the ice lotus, it was frozen into an icicle. "What? It can even freeze void sky divine force. This." Zhuowen was shocked. He stared at the ice lotus as he pondered over what this thing was. It could even freeze void sky divine force. It was too terrifying. Xiao He suddenly spat out the power of extreme fire, which turned into a giant hand. She barely managed to suck the ice lotus into her palm. With a tug, she put the ice lotus into her spirit ring. "No, this ice lotus's freezing power is too strong. My spirit ring is about to be frozen. Hurry up and take it out." The moment the ice lotus entered the spirit ring, Zhuowen immediately noticed that a lot of frost had appeared on the surface of the spirit ring. Helpless, Xiao He took out the ice lotus again and said, "Put it in your internal world." Zhuowen nodded. The black-robed Zhuowen summoned his devouring whirlpool and swallowed the ice lotus into his internal world. Devour's internal world was extremely large. Although the ice lotus's cold power was terrifying, it wasn't enough to freeze Devour's internal world. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the ice lotus was put away, terrifying explosions came from the entrance. Zhuoan knew that the white-robed old man had brought people to attack the confinement-killing array. Sect Master Yin, enter my spirit ring. Zhuoan looked at Yin Bingyun and said. This time, Yin Bingyun didn't refuse. After knowing how strong Zhuoan was, she knew that she would only be a burden if she followed Zhuoan. After Yin Bingyun was put away, the confinement-killing array was broken. The white-haired old man led a group of dark fantasy sect's elite experts to the entrance of the staircase. His cold gaze was fixed on Zhuoan. Who are you? Also, what did you take from the third floor? Hand it all over, destroy your own void bridge, and get out of the dark fantasy sect. The white-haired old man's voice was filled with fear. Zhuoan couldn't be bothered with the white-haired old man. In his heart, he muttered, explode. Boom. Boom. Suddenly, a terrifying whirlpool of explosions appeared at the entrance of the flight of stairs. The simultaneous explosion of 10 void sky divine artifacts produced far more energy than the previous 2 explosions. In the blink of an eye, miserable screams came from the entrance of the staircase. Even the white-haired old man had no choice but to run for his life to deal with the surrounding explosive energy. The white-haired old man really couldn't understand. Zhuoan had already exploded close to 200 divine artifacts, so why were there still divine artifacts left to explode? In the instant of the explosion, Zhuoan, with the glorious amethyst galaxy sword in hand and the no-beginning devil golden sword circling around him, charged into the explosion with the black-robed Zhuoan and the thunder fire sword. Boom! The thunder fire sword smashed towards the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man was the strongest in this group. His cultivation had reached the 7th step of the void sky realm. Therefore, the thunder fire sword unceremoniously used its full strength. Originally, the white-haired old man didn't pay much attention to the thunder fire sword, but when he used his divine artifact to resist the thunder fire sword, he grunted and retreated repeatedly. His eyes finally revealed a look of shock. Chapter 2058. Wreaking havoc in the Dark Mirage sect. The moment the Thunderfire sword suppressed the white-haired old man, Zhuoan and the black-clothed Zhuoan did not hold back at all. Zhuoan's glorious violet galaxy sword, combined with his powerful divine sense and the golden devil sword of no beginning, directly pierced through the crowd on the stairs. In just a single exchange, he killed 2 cultivators of the 3rd step of the void sky. Meanwhile, the black-clothed Zhuoan erupted with a terrifying power of lightning that protected Zhuoan. Die! As he passed through the crowd, 2 terrifying and vast forces suddenly attacked Zhuoan from behind. Without even thinking, the 64 golden devil swords of no beginning formed an enormous vortex of killing intent and met them head-on. Bang! To his astonishment, the vortex of killing intent was instantly destroyed, while he grunted and retreated repeatedly. 2 grey-robed middle-aged men blocked Zhuoan's path. Their auras were vast, and they were actually supreme experts of the 6th step of the void sky. Zhuoan's gaze was dark. He took a deep breath and suddenly clenched his free left hand. Waves of seemingly solid purple intent appeared in the palm of his left hand and gathered into a purple sword that flickered with purple light. This purple sword was a long sword formed from the 6th level Dao intent, and Zhuoan's aura rapidly increased under the support of the Dao intent. Charred. With 2 violet swords in hand, Zhuoan fiercely slashed out, and all the other cultivators that flashed over to besiege him were slashed flying. Then, Zhuoan stomped his right foot and suddenly shot towards the 2 cultivators of the 6th step of the void sky. You're courting death. The 2 cultivators of the 6th step of the void sky were full of cold smiles. They both used their divine abilities and blasted them in front of Zhuoan in an attempt to block his path. The black-clothed Zhuoan immediately used his innate divine ability, Purgatory. At the same time, he opened the eye of heavenly lightning. Terrifying heavenly lightning shot out and broke through the divine abilities of the 2 cultivators. Rumble. Immediately, the black-robed Zhuoan channeled the heaven-devouring demonic book at a high speed. He then reared his head back and roared. This roar was filled with boundless might and majesty. It was as though the black-robed Zhuoan was a noble existence that was above everyone else in this place. The 2 cultivators clearly did not expect the black-clothed Zhuoan to let out such a deafening roar and were momentarily stunned. Zhuowen closed in and the purple swords in his hands transformed into 2 rings of purple light as he stood firmly in front of the 2 cultivators. The purple sword was as fast as the wind, as if it was an illusion. The 7th move of the Tao of Destruction sword technique, sword swimming through the great void. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. In the blink of an eye, he passed by the 2 cultivators and broke the arms of the 2 who were still in a daze. These 2 swords were too mysterious. Coupled with Devour's roar, Zhuowen was able to easily cut off the arms of the 2 6-step void sky cultivators. Zhuowen did not continue fighting. After passing through the obstruction of the 2 cultivators, he quickly brought the black-clothed Zhuowen down to the bottom of the nether hall. As for Xiao He, after seeing Zhuowen escape, she erupted with terrifying lightning and fire energy and charged out of the encirclement. Along the way, she killed many cultivators and caught up to Zhuowen. When the white-haired old man completely blocked the energy from the explosion of the divine artifact and turned around, he could no longer see Zhuowen and the others. Instead, it was the people he brought with him who were either injured or dead. Immediately notify all the disciples of the Dim Mirage sect to intercept that intruder, the white-haired old man said furiously. The others hurriedly took out their communication jade talismans and notified the disciples in charge. In just an instant, the Dim Mirage sect became jittery. Many disciples came out of seclusion to capture Zhuowen. After setting up several killing arrays at the entrance of the Nether Hall, Zhuowen left the Nether Hall. As soon as Zhuowen left the perimeter of the Nether Hall, he saw a group of Dim Mirage sect disciples heading his way. Apart from that, there were many disciples everywhere. They had formed their own groups and were constantly patrolling the area. At that moment, the security of the Dim Mirage sect was several dozen times tighter than when Zhuowen had first entered. Basically all the people of the Dim Mirage sect had been mobilized. Intruder, kill. The group patrolling at the front immediately noticed Zhuowen who had emerged from the forbidden grounds. The cultivator at the head of the group immediately gave the order to kill. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. Right now, he needed to leave the Dim Mirage sect as quickly as possible. Once the experts of the Dim Mirage sect caught up to him, it would be rather difficult for him to leave. Zhuowen really did not take the Dim Mirage sect disciples before him seriously. The 48 demonic golden swords suddenly shot out. Every single one of them could kill a person. When the entire sword formation was mobilized, all the disciples in the group were killed off in an instant. Unfortunately, the disturbance on Zhuowen's side had completely alarmed the other groups nearby. One after another, teams converged towards this side, blocking off Zhuowen's path of escape. Zhuowen's face was sunken as he charged forward with the black-robed Zhuowen. He needed to leave the Dim Mirage sect before those old fellows left the Nether Hall. Kill. Zhuowen struck out without any warning, and he showed no mercy at all. Wherever he passed, most of the Dim Mirage sect disciples were not a match for a single move from Zhuowen. Corpses rained down from the sky of the Dim Mirage sect like raindrops. Unfortunately, enough ants could bite an elephant to death. Most of the Dim Mirage sect disciples were not a match for Zhuowen. However, this was the headquarters of the Dim Mirage sect, their territory. There were countless disciples here. Zhuowen killed wave after wave, basically turning the Dim Mirage sect into a bloodbath. Spurt. Countless abilities and god artifacts flew over, blasting away the demonic golden swords around Zhuowen. He vomited a mouthful of blood as his face paled. However, Zhuowen did not give himself any time to catch his breath. He continued to swing the violet swords in his hands as his 6th-level Tao Intense constantly poured out, increasing his strength as he killed wave after wave of Dim Mirage sect disciples. We're about to reach the exit. Just hold on a little longer. Zhuowen's main body was covered in blood, and the bloodstain at the corner of his lips was a ghastly sight. Even the black-robed Zhuowen was not in a particularly good state. No matter how powerful the two of them were, it was impossible for them to remain unscathed when surrounded by so many Dim Mirage sect disciples. Currently, countless cultivators had gathered around the star where the Dim Mirage sect resided. Most of them were independent cultivators and disciples of other smaller organizations. When the countless cultivators had shot out of the Dim Mirage sect and formed groups to patrol, they had already attracted the attention of the nearby cultivators. And when Zhuoan charged into the encirclement and killed countless dim mirage sect disciples, he had completely shocked these cultivators. They immediately knew that someone had actually barged into the dim mirage sect alone to cause trouble. Was he not courting death? Of course, when these cultivators saw how this troublemaking cultivator killed the surrounding dim mirage sect disciples like he was cutting grass, they knew that this troublemaking cultivator was not simple. Who is this kid? He actually came to the dim mirage sect to cause trouble. Is he not courting death? Why do I feel that this kid is very familiar? I think I've seen him before. That's Zhuoan, the independent cultivator who tricked the 8 sect masters in the Middle Universe Galaxy Grand competition back then. This guy is really bold. Not long after he tricked the 8 sect masters, he actually snuck into the dim mirage sect alone to cause trouble. Someone in the crowd immediately recognized Zhuoan as his voice was filled with excitement. An uproar broke out amongst the crowd. The name Zhuoan had become a household name in this period of time. There was no one who did not know of him. In the star domain, someone who could be jointly wanted by the 8 great sects could not be said to be unheard of in the future, but it was definitely unprecedented. At the very least, before Zhuoan, there had truly been no cultivator who had been jointly wanted by the 8 great sects. It was precisely for this reason that Zhuoan's name had become a household name in the 8 great sects. Of course, this was not a good reputation. That Zhuoan is done for. Look, the disciplinary elders of the dim mirage sect have all come. Suddenly, the crowd noticed that in the depths of the dim mirage sect, the white-haired old man had already left the nether hall and was heading straight for Zhuoan with great speed. Zhuoan also noticed that the white-haired old man was getting closer and closer behind him and felt anxious. He was still some distance away from the entrance, and his current condition was truly not very good. Just the encirclement of so many dim mirage sect disciples was enough to make him suffer, let alone the white-haired old man and the other elders of the dim mirage sect. The white-haired old man very quickly noticed the mountainous pile of corpses below, and the flames of fury in his chest surged. The white-haired old man stared at Zhuoan with bloodshot eyes as he roared, "You're looking to die. You've killed so many of my dim mirage sect disciples. I'll make you pay with your blood." With that, the white-haired old man took a step forward and arrived behind Zhuoan. With a palm strike, the space around Zhuoan completely distorted. Bang! The thunderfire sword suddenly flicked, blocking the white-haired old man's palm strike. At the same time, he sent a message to Zhuoan, "Kid, hurry up and leave. I'll block this old man for you." However, Zhuoan smiled bitterly. He had truly miscalculated this time. The dim mirage sect was not as weak as he had imagined. After all, it was one of the 10 great sects. He had underestimated it too much, resulting in him being surrounded and unable to escape. "Kill him." The white-haired old man ordered the dozen or so elders behind him. Swish, swish, swish. Immediately, the dozen or so elders shot towards Zhuoan. At the same time, the surrounding dim mirage sect disciples also became excited, and their attacks became even more concentrated and terrifying. The 2 people at the head of the dozen or so elders were the 2 experts whose arms had been chopped off by Zhuoan earlier. Now, their severed arms had already completely recovered. After all, at their level of cultivation, as long as it was not a fatal injury or internal injury, they would basically be able to recover very quickly. Zhuoan's gaze was cold as he suddenly took out the soul-absorbing god needle and shot it towards one of the cultivators. The cultivator sneered. He did not particularly care about the soul-absorbing god needle, and with a pinch of the sword in his right hand, he caught the soul-absorbing god needle between his fingers. In his view, this Zhuoan's cultivation was even lower than his, so how powerful could his soul be? Thus, he did not care at all. The moment this cultivator caught the soul-absorbing god needle, Zhuoan detonated all 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space. At this moment, his soul had become terrifyingly powerful, and it suddenly acted on the soul-absorbing god needle. Swish! The powerful force of the soul-absorbing god needle directly annihilated the cultivator's sword finger, and then it sank into the cultivator's forehead. Fart! The cultivator's soul was instantly destroyed, and the powerful spiritual sense attached to the soul-absorbing god needle exploded, completely destroying the cultivator's body. Even the virtual sky bridge was not spared. Chapter 2059. Exposing the heavenly domain starry sky essence. The moment the 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space were shattered, Zhuowen swallowed a drop of heavenly domain starry sky essence that he had long prepared. His spiritual space, which had been severely injured due to the destruction of the divine soul galaxies, instantly recovered after Zhuowen swallowed the heavenly domain starry sky essence. At this moment, the surroundings immediately fell silent. No one had expected that one of the two elders of the Shentian Sixth Ascension that had remained in the Dark Mirage sect would be killed just like that. This had exceeded everyone's expectations. Let's attack together and kill this bastard. The white-haired old man almost went mad with anger as he roared. A sixth-step Void Sky Elder was already considered an overlord in the Heaven Domain. Even in their dark fantasy sect, there were not many experts of such cultivation. This time, apart from Yu Wuxi taking away 7 or 8 six-step Void Sky Elders, their dark fantasy sect only had these two. Now that one of them had died, it was definitely a great blow to the dark fantasy sect. Receiving the white-haired old man's order, the surrounding disciples of the dark fantasy sect instantly went crazy. Together with the dozen or so elders, they used various divine abilities and divine weapons to attack Zhuowen's vital points. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. Before, he was still a little worried that the heavenly domain starry sky essence would be exposed, but now in this almost hopeless situation, Zhuowen knew that he could not survive without using the heavenly domain starry sky essence. At this moment, he did not care whether the heavenly domain starry sky essence would be exposed or not. He took out a jade bottle, took a big gulp, and held it in his mouth. This gulp contained nearly 100 drops, enough to heal his fatal injuries nearly 100 times. The black-clothed Zhuowen also took a gulp, and immediately fought a bloody battle with his main body. Because of the heavenly domain starry sky essence, his main body and his doppelganger were almost fighting with their lives on the line. They simply did not care about the attacks coming from the surroundings. As long as it was not a fatal injury, Zhuowen almost did not dodge, and only sought to quickly defeat the enemy. Bang! 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 In just an instant, like farmers cutting grass, one corpse after another fell from the sky above the dark fantasy sect. The moment Zhuowen was injured, he immediately grabbed a drop of heavenly domain starry sky essence from his mouth, and the black-clothed Zhuowen naturally did the same. How is that possible? This guy has suffered so many fatal blows, how can he still be so lively? The other Void Sky Six Steps cultivator looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. His pupils constricted into needles, and a sense of fear rose in his heart. Sun and moon rise. Zhuowen slashed out with both his purple swords. One of the swords turned into a purple moon while the other turned into a purple sun. The purple moon and the purple sun simultaneously rose up behind him, and then the surrounding space instantly collapsed. Most of the nearby dim Mirage sect disciples were killed. Zhuowen stomped on the ground with his right foot. He did not care about the countless divine powers that were coming at him again. The no-beginning Devil Golden Sword was like a loyal guard as it circled around his body, blocking all the attacks coming at him. Even if the attacks from the outside world were too powerful and broke through the defense of the Golden Sword of No Beginning and blasted onto Zhuowen's body, as long as they were not fatal, he could not be bothered to dodge. In an instant, he arrived in front of Elder Shu Tian Liu Deng. "You're courting death." The Elder Shu Tian Liu Deng reacted. His eyes flashed with a sinister light as he slashed out with both his blades. Two terrifying blades of qi that seemed to cross the horizon tore through the sky and slashed in front of Zhuowen with a boom. Boom. The no-beginning Devil Golden Sword that circled around Zhuowen was instantly destroyed, and Zhuowen grunted as the blade qi slashed at his chest. A gash several dozen inches deep appeared on his chest. The internal organs near his chest had been completely chopped to pieces. The Elder Shu Tian Liu Deng saw Zhuowen's terrifying wounds and sneered inside. He felt that this kid was dead for sure this time. But then, he discovered to his shock that the terrifying wound on this kid's chest was rapidly healing at a visible rate. How is that possible? How did you do it? Shu Tian Liudeng's elder cried out in alarm and attacked Zhuowen with both of his blades without any regard for his life. Zhuowen's main body resisted the terrifying blade qi with difficulty. Although his body was riddled with scars, he was able to heal quickly every time. He was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. At this moment, the elder Shu Tianliu Deng was truly frightened, and his attacks became chaotic. He wasn't afraid of facing a strong enemy, but facing a strange guy that couldn't be killed no matter how he attacked, he was truly afraid. Rumble. The moment the elder Shu Tianliu Deng panicked, the black-clothed Zhuowen rushed out of the endless attacks and arrived behind the elder. The instant the black-clothed Zhuowen swallowed the heavenly domain star essence and healed his injuries, he clenched his right hand. A terrifying devouring force combined with the power of extreme lightning formed a black hole that heavily smashed into the elder's back. Elder Chen, watch your back. A white-robed elder followed closely behind the black-clothed Zhuowen. His expression changed slightly as he couldn't help but shout. Unfortunately, he was too late. The devouring lightning had already smashed into the elder Shu Tianliu Deng's back. Poochie. The elder Shu Tianliu Deng was caught off guard and spat out a mouthful of blood. His movement of slashing out blade qi instantly stopped. The eyes of Zhuowen's main body, who was in the midst of the terrifying blade qi, flashed as he destroyed another 300 divine soul galaxies without hesitation and activated the soul-absorbing God Needle again. Whoosh! The soul-absorbing God Needle was extremely fast. The elder was still in pain from being struck by the devouring lightning and simply wasn't prepared for this move of Zhuowen's. The soul-absorbing God Needle sank into the elder's forehead, and then the terrifying power of divine sense stirred up his divine soul space like a storm, shattering his divine soul space. Even the Shu Tianliu Deng's divine soul space was unable to survive. The moment this elder Shu Tianliu Deng also fell, the other disciples of the dim mirage sect finally began to feel fear. Some of them even quietly retreated, staring fearfully at the sloppy youth bathed in blood in front of them. Enforcement elder. The other elders retreated to the side of the white-haired elder, staring at Zhuowen's main body and doppelganger with fear. The white-haired elder punched the thunder fire sword back and looked at the two dead elders Shu Tianliu Deng with an ugly expression. Who the hell are you? The white-haired elder asked fearfully. Zhuowen sneered, come on, why don't you continue? I've killed so many people of your dim mirage sect, why are you all scared now? Aren't you going to avenge your dead brothers? Zhuowen simply drank another mouthful of heavenly domain star essence, and then threw it to the black-clothed Zhuowen. The latter drank the last bit of heavenly domain star essence in the jade bottle and held it in his mouth. This is heavenly domain star essence. You must be that Zhuowen. The white-haired elder finally guessed what was in the jade bottle. This person's performance just now was really too strange. He had clearly been fatally wounded many times and should have died, but every time he was able to recover to his peak and continue to fight as lively as a dragon and a tiger. And there was nothing else that could make him recover to his peak in an instant other than the legendary heavenly domain star essence. At this moment, there were more and more cultivators gathering outside the dim mirage sect, and all of them stared fervently at the blood-soaked figure in the great array of the dim mirage sect. From Zhuowen's performance just now, as long as one was not a fool, one could tell that this boy absolutely had a lot of heavenly domain star essence. It should be known that Zhuowen had been fatally wounded at least 100 times, but he was able to recover to his peak each time, which meant that he had taken nearly 100 drops of heavenly domain star essence in these 100 times. In the outside world, a drop of heavenly domain star essence was already rare in the world. Even in the auction that shook the entire star domain this time, it was said that only 10 drops of heavenly domain star essence had been auctioned. But just now, Zhuowen alone had taken nearly 100 drops, and this did not include Zhuowen's doppelganger. If it was included, it would be nearly 200 drops. 200 drops of heavenly domain star essence was enough to make the entire star domain go crazy. At this moment, there were already many void sky cultivators outside the dim mirage sect who had hired dozens of powerful divine array masters to set up an inescapable trap and kill array. Instead, it was the temporary teleportation formation that Zhuowen had secretly set up in a remote area on the outskirts of the dark mirage sect that had not been discovered. Fortunately, Zhuowen had set up a concealment formation in the surroundings, or the temporary teleportation formation would definitely have been exposed. The moment he recognized Zhuoan, the white-haired elder was first shocked, and then his breathing quickened. If the cultivators outside the dim mirage sect could think of it, he could naturally think of it as well. Just now, Zhuoan had used Heavenly Domain Star Essence nearly 100 times, and this Zhuoan could squander Heavenly Domain Star Essence so casually, it could be seen that this boy must have a lot of it on him. Thinking of this, the white-haired elder impatiently took out a token and sent out a signal. Immediately, he shouted with his divine power, "Everyone, join forces and capture this boy. Once we capture this boy, everyone will be rewarded with 10,000 top-grade divine stones and a level 7 divine medicine. All disciples below the Void Sky Realm will have a chance to obtain a Void Ascension Pill. Void Ascension Pill? Top-grade divine stones? And a level 7 divine medicine. What else are you thinking? Let's kill this boy together." The rewards that the white-haired elder announced were really too tempting, causing the many dim Mirage sect disciples who had originally retreated to fly toward Zhuoan with bloodshot eyes without any regard for their lives. Middle Universe. The star continent where the Great Fortune Trading Company branch was located was crowded with countless cultivators. At this moment, the inside of the trading company was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Those who could enter the trading company were either cultivators from large forces, experts with high status, or wealthy rogue cultivators. On the auction stage, an enchanting female cultivator, twisting her slender waist, shouted, "The last auction item is the Heavenly Domain Star Essence that everyone has been waiting for. The starting price is 100 million divine stones, and each increment must not be less than 10 million. When the jade bottle containing 10 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence was presented, the entire trading company was in an uproar. Then, the price rose rapidly from 100 million to 10 billion, and the momentum of the rise was extremely fierce. In a VIP seat, Yu Wuxi sat quietly in his seat, looking at the constant bids below, and did not participate in the auction. Chapter 2060. Revealing his true body ancestor. What's wrong? Yu Yewei and the other experts in the VIP seats were puzzled by Yu Wuxi's strange behavior. Yu Wuxi's face was as dark as water. An unconcealable murderous intent exploded in the VIP seats. Yu Yewei and the others felt a chill in their hearts. 1 trillion divine stones. I hope everyone can give me and the Dark Illusion sect some face and let this old man have the Heavenly Domain Starry Essence. Yu Wuxi immediately reported all the divine stones he had on him. At the same time, he also reported his name. The entire trading house fell into silence. The bidding price had reached more than 100 billion, but Yu Wuxi had increased it by 1,000 times. How could everyone not be shocked? Moreover, Yu Wuxi had even called out his identity. It was obvious that he was determined to get the Heavenly Domain Starry Essence. Many cultivators in the trading house who knew the inside story knew that this Yu Wuxi was not Yu Yewei, but the Dark Illusion sect's ancestor, Yu Wuxi. This was an 8-step void heaven old man. Although he had been seriously injured back then, it was still easy for him to kill a 7-step void heaven cultivator. Who would dare to provoke such a terrifying existence? However, while ordinary cultivators did not dare to provoke him, the other sect masters in the VIP seats of the top 10 sects did not. Senior, you must be joking. The Heavenly Domain Starry Essence will naturally go to the highest bidder. I bid 1 trillion divine stones. A calm laughter came from the opposite box. The person who called out a price that exceeded Yu Wuxi's. Yu Wuxi slammed the table beside him and stared at the box with a gloomy gaze. He said coldly, "Junior Waning Moon, your half-moon Hall's Yuezu is not here. What right do you have to talk to me like this?" As he spoke, a terrifying murderous intent spread out. Then, the trading house shook violently. The surrounding boxes were all broken open, revealing the figures of the other sect's cultivators. The half-moon Hall cultivators that Waning Moon brought were no exception. Waning Moon frowned slightly. Her beautiful eyes fell on Yu Wuxi. She was surprised that Yu Wuxi was so angry. The cultivators from the other 10 great sects also looked at Yu Wuxi with fear in their eyes as he exuded a murderous aura. All the sect masters of the 10 major sects were present, but none of their old ancestors were present. Only the old ancestor of the dark fantasy sect, Uwusi, came to bid for the heavenly domain starry sky essence. It could be said that the Dark Mirage sect was the greatest competitor of the other 9 sects in this auction. Of course, the other 9 great sects weren't afraid that Uwusi would try to rob them. If Uwusi dared to act recklessly, the ancestors of the other 9 great sects would not sit idly by. They would immediately come out of seclusion to deal with Uwusi. There was no fear in Elder Waning Moon's beautiful eyes. She calmly said, "An auction is won by the highest bidder. If Senior Nether wants to snatch it, then I have nothing to say. However, I'll report this matter to Lord Uezu." Uwusi frowned slightly. Uezu was the old ancestor of the Half Moon Hall. Moreover, Uwusi's serious injuries were caused by Uezu. Although they were both Void Sky 8 Steps experts, Uezu was extremely talented and powerful. Moreover, he was already at the peak of the Void Sky 8 Steps. Therefore, Uwusi wasn't Uezu's opponent at that time and was heavily injured. After countless years, Uwusi's injuries were still lingering in his body. On the other hand, Uezu's strength would only grow stronger. Uwusi didn't have any confidence in facing Uezu. With a cold snort, Uwusi's right hand reached out and grabbed an old man from the void. "Lord, why did you grab this lowly one?" the old man asked in fear. Just a moment ago, this old man was still at the back of the auction hall. In the blink of an eye, he was caught by Uwusi without anyone noticing. What kind of great ability did this require? "You're the manager of the Great Fortune Trading Company, right? I'm willing to pay 10 trillion divine stones for a drop of heavenly domain star essence in this jade bottle. Is that okay?" Although Uwusi's words carried a hint of negotiation, his tone didn't carry the slightest hint of negotiation. Instead, it carried an unquestionable tone. The old man hurriedly nodded and said, "Of course, of course." Uwusi nodded and threw the old man onto the auction stage, allowing him to take out a drop of heavenly domain star essence. After receiving a drop of heavenly domain star essence, Uwusi straightforwardly paid 10 trillion divine stones and instantly swallowed the heavenly domain star essence. The moment Uwusi opened his eyes, his aura actually swelled a little. He let out a long whistle and transmitted his voice to Uyewe. "Something big has happened in the sect. Bring everyone back immediately. I'll be heading back first." After saying that, Uwusi disappeared from the trading company. Uyewe immediately led the many experts of the Dim Illusion sect and left. The actions of the Dim Illusion sect's group naturally aroused the doubts and suspicions of many cultivators in the trading company. "Master, Uwusi seems to be in a hurry to return. Did something happen in the Dim Illusion sect?" Tongchime, who was standing behind Elder Waning Moon, asked curiously. Elder Waning Moon shook her head and said, "I'm not sure. Let's focus on the remaining heavenly domain star essence." Seeing that Tongchime was absent-minded, Elder Waning Moon asked again, "Chime, what are you thinking about?" "Oh, I'm not thinking about anything. Let's continue the auction." Tongchime recovered and said with a smile. Elder Waning Moon nodded and gave Tongchime a deep look before her gaze fell on the auction. Zhuoan looked coldly at the white-haired old man who had sent the signal. He knew that if he really wanted to break through the encirclement of the Dim Illusion sect, he had to severely injure this old fart. Moreover, he did not have much time left. Uwusi definitely knew what had happened in the Dark Mirage sect. If he continued to delay like this, by the time Uwusi rushed back, leaving would be wishful thinking for him. "We have to kill this old fart at all costs. Xiao Hei, are you confident?" Zhuoan suddenly transmitted to Xiao Hei. Xiao Hei replied, "If I erupt with all the power of the Purple Star Sovereign, I am confident that I can severely injure this white-haired old man. However, it will be very difficult to kill him. Moreover, after erupting with all the power of the Purple Star Sovereign, I will also use up all the energy of the extreme lightning and fire in the Thunder Fire Sword." Zhuoan nodded. He knew what Xiao Hei meant. After erupting this time, the Thunder Fire Sword would no longer be able to use the power of the Purple Star Sovereign. This also meant that the 5 times stipulated by the Purple Star Sovereign would all be used up this time. "It's fine. I must kill this old fart. Otherwise, we won't be able to leave." Zhuowen's eyes revealed a resolute expression as he glanced at the black-clothed Zhuowen not far away. If Xiao He could kill the white-haired old man, that would be the best. If she could only severely injure him, Zhuowen would probably reveal Devour's true body. Devour could only unleash his strongest power when he revealed his true body. Zhuowen had already nurtured Devour's doppelganger into true god Extreme Thunder, whose strength was comparable to a fourth-step void sky cultivator. Once he revealed his true body, his strength would stack up with true god Extreme Thunder's strength, and he would probably be comparable to a sixth-step void sky cultivator. If Xiao He could seriously injure the white-haired old man, Zhuowen would risk revealing his true body to kill the white-haired old man. Unfolding the torch dragon wings, Zhuowen dodged most of the attacks while engaging in a fierce battle with the surrounding dim illusion sect disciples. On the other hand, Xiao He dashed out toward the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man sneered. In his opinion, the Thunder Fire Sword was indeed powerful. However, it was at most on par with him. It was almost impossible for it to defeat him. The white-haired old man had already informed Yu Wuxi and the others in Middle Universe. As long as Yu Wuxi rushed over in advance, Zhuowen and his strange sword would not be able to escape. Hence, the white-haired old man needed to stall for time. The white-haired old man wielded a divine spear and thrust it forward, wanting to block the Thunder Fire Sword. Catcher! But when the long sword collided with the Thunder Fire Sword, the aura of the Thunder Fire Sword instantly increased by several times. The terrifying energy of thunder and fire circled around the sword, forming a terrifying spiral. It actually shattered the long spear in an instant. Swoosh! The Thunder Fire Sword pierced through the white-haired old man's glabella like a hot knife through butter. Rumble! The white-haired old man's head instantly exploded. Afterwards, a massive illusory bridge rose behind the white-haired old man. This illusory bridge had a total of 9 steps. 7 of them had already been lit up, indicating that the white-haired old man had reached the 7th step of the illusory bridge. The vast energy of the illusory bridge shone down, and the white-haired old man's exploded head began to slowly heal. Kid, to destroy that illusory bridge, this Dragon Lord has already exploded with all the power of thunder and fire. I'm almost powerless now. Xiao He suddenly transmitted to Zhuowen. Zhuowen instantly slashed out with both swords. Terrifying violet light filled the sky, and the numerous dim illusion sect disciples surrounding him all retreated. The main body glanced at the nearby black-clothed Zhuowen. The black-clothed Zhuowen nodded and roared at the sky. This roar was like the collapse of a mountain, shaking the hearts of all the cultivators and giving them a feeling of worship. The black-clothed Zhuowen no longer concealed himself. His figure grew larger and larger, and eventually turned into a colossus. Like a dark cloud, he hovered above the dim illusion sect, almost shrouding the entire star continent where the dim illusion sect was. The moment Devour released his enormous aura, countless cultivators both inside and outside the dim illusion sect felt a sense of fear rise in their hearts. This was the innate fear of a lower being towards a higher being, a fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. As soon as Devour's main body appeared, all the cultivators of the dim illusion sect subconsciously stopped moving. As for the white-haired old man, because the Thunder Fire Sword had pierced through his glabella, his soul had been damaged. Now, he was being healed by the energy of the illusory bridge, so he was still unconscious. Naturally, he could not feel the terror of Devour. At this moment, Devour's appearance had changed greatly. Lightning surged all over his body, mixed with a dense demonic mist. In the demonic mist, a pair of huge blood-red eyes could be seen. He looked like a terrifying beast from ancient times. Devour glanced indifferently at the illusory bridge of the white-haired old man. Then, he stomped his foot, lowered his head, opened his huge mouth, and swallowed the illusory bridge that stretched across the illusory bridge. The terrifying devouring power completely cut off the connection between the white-haired old man and the illusory bridge. Plop. Chapter 2061. Enraged Yu Wuxi at this moment, all the cultivators of the dim mirage sect fell into a daze. The white-haired old man was the enforcement elder of the dim mirage sect, the strongest person stationed in the dim mirage sect this time. But now, the strongest person had been killed just like that. It was just too inconceivable. Moreover, what was that giant beast shrouded in dense demonic mist? Its pressure was too terrifying, suppressing many disciples of the dim mirage sect, causing them to tremble and not dare to move recklessly. Zhuowen leaped up and landed on Devour's body, looking down at the many trembling disciples of the dim mirage sect. My name is Zhuowen. If any of you still want to kill me, come, continue to attack me. Zhuowen's indifferent voice sounded faintly. The response to Zhuowen was silence. Even the enforcement elder of the dim mirage sect had died in this person's hands, not to mention them. Moreover, this person had a heaven-defying item like the heavenly domain starry sky essence, and a large quantity at that. Every time he was heavily injured, he could rely on the heavenly domain starry sky essence to quickly recover to his peak. How could they fight him? Zhuowen's gaze fell on the outside of the dim mirage sect. He naturally saw that many wandering cultivators had laid down a death trap array outside the dim mirage sect. Rumble. Devour suddenly struck out with a claw, causing numerous ripples to appear on the surface of the dim mirage sect. This was the great defensive array of the dim mirage sect. Although Devour had revealed his true strength and was unparalleled, this was the great defensive array of the dim mirage sect that had been laid down for countless years. It was almost impossible for him to destroy it. Of course, if Zhuowen had followed the original path and returned to the exit he had used to enter the dim mirage sect, he could still leave the dim mirage sect. However, now that he had even used the Devour body, he naturally did not intend to use that exit. Still not opening your great defensive array? Zhuowen coldly looked at the remaining 7 or 8 elders not far away. In the previous battle, several elders had died at Zhuowen's hands, leaving only these 7 or 8 elders alive. These 7 to 8 elders trembled in fear as they looked at Zhuowen. One of the elders said in a trembling voice, the sect-protecting Grand Array was mainly controlled by the disciplinary elder. Now that he is dead, we can't open it with just us, so. Zhuowen squinted, reaching out his right hand. With Devour's power, the rolling demon mist turned into a giant hand, grabbing the elder who had just spoken. You're lying. Zhuowen's eyes were cold and gloomy. Soon after, a terrifying demonic mist shackled this person. Then, his enormous divine sense unceremoniously invaded this person's spiritual space. Opening his eyes, Zhuowen's expression was unsightly. He took a jade talisman from the man's body. The light from the jade talisman slowly faded away. Clearly, someone had just sent a message to this man. He probed the jade talisman with his divine sense. There was only one sentence inside, delay that Zhuowen. This old man will be back soon. Who sent the message? Zhuowen looked at the person indifferently. The person trembled and stammered, I don't know, you don't know? Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy and cold. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a vast divine sense extended over from the other side of the star continent, followed by a suffocating and terrifying aura. Ignorant brat, quickly surrender and hand over everything you've obtained. Otherwise, this old man will exterminate your 9 generations and consign everyone related to you to eternal damnation. A thunderous voice rang out from extremely far away in the starry sky, exploding in the minds of every cultivator. Zhuowen frowned. This sound was mainly targeted at him, and it was actually attacking his divine sense. Unfortunately, his spiritual space was much more powerful than ordinary void sky cultivators. This person's spiritual space was indeed powerful, but it would not be so easy to injure Zhuowen's spiritual space. On the other hand, the many independent cultivators gathered around the dim illusion sect were momentarily dazed by this voice. The ancestor has returned. We're saved. The disciples of the dim illusion sect who had originally sunk into despair all glowed with hope, revealing different expressions on their faces. Even the elder whose neck was being held by Zhuowen relaxed. He could not help but sneer coldly at Zhuowen. The ancestor of our dim illusion sect has returned. If you know what's good for you, let go of me. Otherwise, you really won't have the slightest chance of survival. Noisy. Zhuowen could not be bothered with the elder's threat. With a thought, surging demonic qi enveloped the person. With a miserable shriek, the person was completely devoured by the devouring demonic qi. What audacity! You actually dare to kill a member of my dim illusion sect in front of this seat. Yu Wuxi's gloomy voice rang out again. This time, it was even louder, as if it was right in front of him. Zhuowen's lips were filled with a mocking smile. Others might not know, but he knew that Yu Wuxi was still some distance away from the dim illusion sect. Zhuowen's current divine sense was enough to cross the distance of 300 galaxies. He could even detect Yu Wuxi's exact location. He knew that it would probably take some time for Yu Wuxi to arrive here. Why wouldn't I dare? Zhuo Wen and Devour roared. The terrifying demonic mist covered the entire dark fantasy sect in just a blink of an eye. Inside the demonic mist, devouring vortexes moved like venomous snakes, attacking the dark fantasy sect's disciples around. Some of the weaker disciples were basically finished off by the devouring vortexes. As for the stronger disciples, they could barely resist the devouring vortexes that suddenly appeared around them. Zhuowen hid within the demonic qi. His right hand held the glorious amethyst galaxy sword, his left hand held the purple sword condensed from 6 Dao intents. His body was surrounded by the golden sword of no beginning as he shuttled through the demonic qi like a ghost. Didn't Yu Wuxi not allow him to kill the dim illusion sect disciples? Today, he would slaughter all these dark mirage sect disciples under the control of Yu Wuxi's divine sense. Zhuowen's first target was the remaining 7 elders. Devour didn't hold back at all. He attached the energy of extreme lightning to the demonic qi, making it impossible to guard against. Devour even released his 2 great divine abilities, Purgatory and Heavenly Thunder Eye. One after another, the dim illusion sect disciples fell. Even the most powerful disciples found it much harder to resist. Pucci. Zhuowen's real body was like a ghost. Sword after sword, as fast as lightning, the dim illusion sect disciples fell one after another. In the end, he arrived in front of the 7 elders. The golden sword of no beginning turned into a massive killing intent vortex and smashed towards them. The 7 elders naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They all took action, wanting to block the killing intent vortex. Unfortunately, the killing intent vortex was too powerful. It killed the first 3 in an instant. However, at the cost of sacrificing 3 elders, the killing intent vortex was stopped. Zhuo Wen dashed out from behind the still whirlpool of killing intent. The soul-absorbing godly needle shot out and drilled into the forehead of the 4th elder without any warning, destroying his soul and illusory heavenly bridge, killing him completely. At the same time, Zhuo Wen wielded the purple sword in both hands, performing the 7th move of the Tao-destroying sword art, Sword Swimming Great Void. The profound sword art was like an illusory streamer. In a flash, it slashed across the necks of the remaining 3 elders, chopping off their heads. Zhuowen's powerful divine sense invaded their bodies without hesitation, destroying their illusory bridge. After killing the 7 elders, Zhuowen jumped up and landed on Devour's back. His divine sense had detected that Yu Wuxi was very close to this place. Little bastard, you're dead. If I, Yu Wuxi, don't kill you today, I'm not a man. A thunderous roar came rushing over. With Yu Wuxi's powerful divine sense, he could clearly detect everything that had happened here. At this place, there were 15 elders of the dark fantasy sect. Now, all of them had been killed by Zhuowen alone. Moreover, the number of disciples of the dark fantasy sect that had died was innumerable. Now, he could only detect a few disciples of the dark fantasy sect. The disciples of the sect were the foundation of the sect. Among them, there were many talented geniuses with limitless future achievements. Now that most of these talented disciples had been killed by Zhuo Wen, the future development of his dark mirage sect would enter a blank period, and it would be very difficult for him to recover. These were the seeds of the dark fantasy sect's rise and fall. Now, almost all of them had been killed. How could Yu Wuxi not be angry? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. In his divine sense, Yu Wuxi's speed suddenly increased. He would arrive here soon. Zhuowen knew that he could not stay here any longer. Otherwise, if he really bumped into Yu Wuxi, it would be too late for him to leave. After all, Yu Wuxi was an old monster of the Void Sky 8 steps. It was impossible for him to be his opponent. Thinking of this, Zhuowen retrieved Devour's real body. Soon after, the torch dragon wings unfolded and flew to the exit he had made. Walking out of the exit, Zhuowen immediately activated the temporary teleportation formation and left the Dark Fantasy sect in a flash. Not long after Zhuowen left the teleportation formation, a terrifyingly imposing figure streaked across the starry sky like a shooting star and smashed into the star continent where the Dark Fantasy sect was located. The entire continent began to tremble. The numerous rogue cultivators on the continent were horrified as they stared blankly at Yu Wuxi. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It should be known that Yu Wuxi was an old monster of the Void Sky 8 steps. He was a supreme expert that rogue cultivators like them could not hope to reach. Who would dare to provoke him? Yu Wuxi did not have time to check the Dark Fantasy sect. His eyes were fixed on Zhuowen, who had already left through the temporary teleportation formation. Where do you think you're going? Today, even if you run to the ends of the earth, this old man will catch you and bring you back to die. Yu Wuxi growled. He leaped up, following the fluctuations of the teleportation formation, disappearing at an extremely fast speed. That Zhuowen is really bold. In front of an expert like Yu Wuxi, he dares to kill the disciples of the Dark Fantasy sect. I feel that this kid has guts. Since he has already killed the people of the Dark Fantasy sect, what's the harm in killing a few more? However, the Dark Fantasy sect has suffered a great loss this time. 15 elders and countless disciples. I'm afraid it will take at least 1,000 years for them to recover. Chapter 2062. Danger zone. Somewhere in the starry sky, a formless ripple appeared, and Zhuowen's figure appeared. Zhuowen looked around, and his expression suddenly changed. Within the range of his divine sense, he could see Yu Wuxi hurrying over. Little bastard, you can't run. Yu Wuxi's furious voice rang out, and a large hand silently appeared behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen hurriedly activated the temporary teleportation array again and disappeared from the spot. The huge hand had missed its target. Outside the Dark Mirage sect, he had set up many temporary teleportation formations that were continuously connected. Once he was transported out of the first transportation array, he would continue to be transported one after another until he reached the destination of the last temporary transportation array. Cunning brat, you actually set up so many temporary transportation arrays, but you still can't escape from this lord's palm. Yu Wuxi's gaze was as cold as a venomous snake's. He glanced indifferently at Zhuowen, who had disappeared before his eyes, and snorted coldly. Following the ripple of the transportation array, he rushed out once again. Just like that, Zhuowen and Yu Wuxi chased each other across almost half of Dongyu. Cold sweat gradually appeared on Zhuowen's forehead. Yu Wuxi's divine sense had firmly locked onto him. No matter where he used the transportation array to teleport to, he would be found by Yu Wuxi's divine sense, which would then chase after him. This time, Zhuowen's transportation array's destination was set on the planet where Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan were. Originally, Zhuowen had planned to teleport away after rescuing Yin Bingyun, directly taking Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan with him. However, now that he had been targeted by this old fellow, Yu Wuxi, Zhuowen knew that the situation had become somewhat troublesome. After activating the last transportation array, Zhuowen teleported back to the planet where Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan were. Without saying a word, he waved his hand and put Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan, who were still in the room, into his spirit ring. Then, Zhuowen unfurled his torch dragon wings and instantly left the planet, rushing towards the border of the star field. The torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings had already matured. Each of them was strong and mighty, constantly wrapping around the torch dragon wings, increasing its speed by several times. Not long after Zhuowen left the planet, Yu Wuxi arrived. He glanced at Zhuowen's back and grinned. Looks like the transmission array has been used up. Now, prepare to die. After saying that, Yu Wuxi disappeared and charged at Zhuowen. The distance between him and Zhuowen was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen's gaze was dark as he waved his right hand and a thick purple intent adhered to the illumination dragon wings on his back like maggots. After receiving the blessing of Dao insight, the 9 torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They instantly became excited and violent, constantly roaring. The speed of the torch dragon wings also increased rapidly as they carried Zhuowen through the starry sky. One could only vaguely see a hazy purple shadow. The distance that had been constantly shortening because of Yu Wuxi was no longer shortening at this moment. Instead, it was faintly widening. Yu Wuxi's pupils shrank as he looked in surprise at the purple light on the surface of the torch dragon wings on Zhuowen's back. He knew that this boy's sudden increase in speed was due to this purple light. Interesting, this boy really has a big secret on him. The heavenly domain starry sky essence, the colossal beast avatar, and this mysterious and strange purple power, but all of these will soon be mine. Yu Wuxi's eyes were blazing. At this moment, the miserable state of the Dark Illusion sect had long been thrown to the back of his mind. Now, his eyes were only focused on the things on Zhuowen. The value of the heavenly domain starry sky essence alone was enough to completely offset all the things that Zhuowen had done in the Dark Illusion sect. Thinking of this, Yu Wuxi stretched out his skinny hands and continuously formed strange seals before finally blasting them in front of his chest. Creak. Creak. Suddenly, Yu Wuxi's entire body emitted a strange sound of bones dislocating. Then, the veins on his forehead bulged and the bones on his back drilled out of his flesh. On both sides of his back, a pair of incomparably huge bone wings grew. This pair of bone wings was extremely strange. On both sides of the bone wings were two eerie white skulls. Moreover, the hollow eyes of these two skulls were suffused with a green ghost fire. Whoosh! The moment the bone wings grew, Yu Wuxi's right foot stomped on the ground and his speed instantly increased by several times. Zhuowen, who had just pulled away from Yu Wuxi with great difficulty, naturally saw Yu Wuxi's speed increase behind him and his heart sank to the extreme. Little bastard, you killed so many of my Dark Illusion sect's disciples and you want to leave just like that? Do you think that's possible? Yu Wuxi leaped a few times and appeared above Zhuowen. His skinny right hand suddenly pressed down and countless black bone hands condensed into numerous black bone hands that pierced towards Zhuowen's back. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy as he immediately summoned the no-beginning demon gold sword to block his back. Bang! Unfortunately, although the no-beginning demon gold sword was powerful, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in the face of Yu Wuxi's powerful attack. Poochie! The no-beginning demon gold sword was blasted away and Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body flew backwards and a trace of dispiritedness appeared in his eyes. Die! Yu Wuxi's eyes were filled with disdain. In his opinion, this Zhuowen was simply too weak. The bone hands' momentum did not decrease as they continued to sweep towards Zhuowen's vitals. This attack was enough to destroy Zhuowen's body and soul. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy as he immediately released the black-clothed Zhuowen. A terrifying extreme lightning energy manifested into a huge lightning fist that heavily smashed against the bone hands. Crackle! The bone hands that had been like a hot knife through butter were forced to a halt by the lightning fist. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity to escape with the black-clothed Zhuowen. Yu Wuxi was too strong. He was a powerful existence at the Void Sky 8th step. The white-haired old man that Zhuowen had killed before was at the Void Sky 7th step. Zhuowen had barely managed to kill that white-haired old man with the help of the Purple Star Sovereign's power in the Thunder Fire Sword. However, Yu Wuxi was different. If he wanted to kill that white-haired old man, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Now that Zhuowen was facing such a powerful existence, he had no chance of winning. Even his chances of survival were pitifully low. You can't escape. Yu Wuxi's mouth was full of ridicule. He once again urged his bone wings to catch up with Zhuowen. The bone hands once again struck out and sent the black-clothed Zhuowen flying. At the same time, Zhuowen's internal organs felt like they were about to shift. After taking a drop of heavenly domain star essence, Zhuowen recovered to his peak state and continued to flee. It really is the heavenly domain star essence. At first, the enforcement elder said that you had a lot of heavenly domain star essence. I didn't believe him at first, but now I do. Seeing Zhuowen recover to his peak state in an instant, Yu Wuxi's eyes blazed with passion. He couldn't wait to capture Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen was too cunning. Although Yu Wuxi was faster than Zhuowen, there was a limit to how fast he could be. He could only use his attacks to disturb Zhuowen and slow him down. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Die. Yu Wuxi's mouth curled into a sinister smile. His bone wings suddenly spread open and the two skulls on both ends of his bone wings opened their mouths and spat out two oily green ghost flames. These oily green flames didn't have the slightest bit of temperature. On the contrary, they gave off a bone-piercing chill. Zhuowen was extremely sensitive to this kind of chill. He had felt this kind of chill on the third floor of the Nether Hall, and the source of that chill was the ice lotus that he had taken away. Raw. These two ghost flames were too terrifying. Zhuowen's real body didn't dare to face them directly. He immediately asked the black-clothed Zhuowen to reveal his real body. He opened his bloody mouth and swallowed the ghost flames. However, Devour wasn't in a good condition. The two ghost flames were moving around in his body, which even affected his god soul. Puff. Zhuowen spurted out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. Just as he was about to spit out the ghost flames, the ice lotus that he had swallowed into his body suddenly absorbed the two ghost flames. This ice lotus was terrifying. Zhuowen had purposely placed it in the outermost area of his body. As for the deepest area, it was where the Z-Wei galaxy and the heavenly armor star were located, so the ice lotus couldn't affect them. This thing can absorb Yu Wuxi's attack. Excellent. Zhuowen's eyes brightened. He immediately flapped his torch dragon wings and fled. Yu Wuxi furrowed his brows, coldly looking at Devour's giant body. He was surprised and muttered, "It's Devour. I didn't expect it to be Devour. This kid has so many secrets. I didn't expect him to have a mount like Devour. This kid must be killed. These things can only belong to me." Then, Yu Wuxi's attacks became fiercer. However, Zhuowen's devouring power had swallowed them all. However, Devour's devouring power wasn't omnipotent. Yu Wuxi's attacks were still beyond Devour's endurance. Zhuowen could clearly feel that Devour's bodily functions were weakening as Yu Wuxi's attacks became fiercer. It can't continue like this. Devour will get hurt sooner or later. Zhuowen's heart sank to the bottom. Eventually, Devour turned into a cluster of black mist, entering Zhuowen's spirit ring. Zhuowen immediately sent the heavenly star marrow into the ring, asking Devour to swallow it. However, he found that Devour could only recover a part of its power. It couldn't recover instantly. Is it because Devour's body structure is different from humans? Is it because the heavenly star marrow doesn't have much effect on it? Zhuowen's eyes were dark like water. If that was the case, he was done for. Devour was his strongest clone, which was much stronger than his real body. However, Devour couldn't recover in a short time, which was a fatal problem for Zhuowen. Devour's severely wounded. You don't need to use the heavenly star marrow to heal him. Although the heavenly star marrow has a great effect, it's only effective to humans, who don't have a big body. Devour's body is too big. One drop of the heavenly star marrow isn't enough. Yu Wuxi sneered, waving his right hand. Countless bone thorns flew toward Zhuowen like a storm. Chapter 2063. 7 Dao Intense Pucci. A bloody hole appeared between Zhuowen's eyebrows. However, at the moment of his death, Zhuowen immediately swallowed the heavenly domain starry essence that he had kept in his mouth. Yu Wuxi snorted coldly as he watched Zhuowen recover in an instant. He didn't seem to care at all as he launched another terrifying attack. The surrounding bone spikes rained down like rain, forming a wall of bone spikes that sealed the space around Zhuowen. It was impossible for Zhuowen to break through this terrifying wall of bone spikes in a short period of time. Yu Wuxi's attacks became faster and faster. Every attack was enough to tear Zhuowen to shreds. However, Zhuowen was like a tenacious cockroach. Every time he was on the verge of death, he would quickly swallow the heavenly domain starry essence. Moreover, the moment Yu Wuxi tried to grab him, he would immediately use the torch dragon wings to dodge. This caused Zhuowen and Yu Wuxi to be in a stalemate for a while. However, Zhuowen was smiling bitterly in his heart. He knew that this stalemate couldn't last for long. In this short period of time, he had almost walked through the gates of hell more than 10 times. However, the more dangerous the situation was, the more focused Zhuowen's mind was. He repeatedly used the 6th level Tao intent. The purple intent spread around his body, causing his figure to become hazy and indistinct. Yu Wuxi frowned slightly as the coldness in his eyes intensified. Moreover, he didn't want to continue fighting with Zhuowen. With a cold snort, Yu Wuxi crossed his hands and rapidly formed a hand seal. Then, a ray of dim light burst out from his hand seal. It was extremely fast and disappeared in a flash, entering the purple intent. Whoosh! Wherever the dim light passed, the purple intent dispersed and disappeared without a trace. Then, Zhuowen's figure was revealed within the purple intent. Zhuowen stared fixedly at the dim light. He felt a fatal threat from this dim light. It was as if he was hit by this dim light, he would definitely die. As the dim light got closer, the threat of death grew stronger. Although Zhuowen still had the heavenly domain starry sky essence in his mouth, his intuition told him that even the heavenly domain starry sky essence would not be able to save him if he was hit by this dim light. No, I can't be hit by this attack. Otherwise, I'll definitely die. Zhuowen believed in his instincts. He could feel the terror of this dim light. Most likely, Yu Wuxi was no longer holding back. Zhuowen wanted to escape, but he discovered that Yu Wuxi's terrifying pressure was firmly suppressing him. It was like a vast mountain pressing down on an ant. No matter how hard this ant tried, it was simply impossible for him to escape the heavy pressure of this vast mountain. As the dim light got closer and closer, cold sweat dripped down Zhuowen's forehead. The threat of death enveloped Zhuowen's heart, causing Zhuowen's heart to sink to the extreme. At this moment, Zhuowen was like a drowning person that desperately urged the energy of his Tao insight. A terrifying purple will burst out from Zhuowen's body like blazing sunlight and shot out in all directions. Even so, it was still useless. The dim light ignored the power of the purple will and continued to shorten the distance between it and Zhuowen. Once the dim light sank into the depths of Zhuowen's forehead, Zhuowen knew that he was finished. Extreme unwillingness caused Zhuowen to involuntarily growl. He was unwilling to die like this. He still had many unfinished business. He still had to save his wife, Mu Chunxue. He had promised to go to Six Desires Heaven to find Moyan Wushang in the future. He had also promised Yun Chuyu and the others that he would send them safely back to Brahma Star. How could he die like this? I won't accept this. Zhuowen roared to the sky. Suddenly, the purple will around him began to boil. The purple will that had originally collapsed condensed and reformed. It became denser and denser until it finally turned into a purple chi. The purple chi was like a ribbon that shot out and twined around Zhuowen's body. The terrifying pressure that had fallen on Zhuowen's body suddenly dissipated the moment the purple will turned into purple chi. The 9 torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings had completely turned into purple dragons. Their bodies were also several times larger than before. Swoosh! After breaking through Yu Wuxi's pressure, the torch dragon wings spread open. Zhuowen's speed was so fast that he disappeared from his spot. Of course, that terrifying dim light missed its target. When he reached the edge of the bone wall, Zhuowen didn't hesitate to summon Devour's doppelganger. The doppelganger condensed the heavenly devouring devil book and the extreme lightning force, smashing a hole in the bone wall. As for Zhuowen, he passed through the hole and instantly disappeared into the distance. Although Yu Wuxi had wounded Devour severely, a drop of the heavenly domain star marrow couldn't restore him to his peak state instantly. However, Zhuowen had more than one drop of the heavenly domain star marrow. He had dozens of barrels. After drinking a barrel of the heavenly domain star marrow, Devour had recovered to his peak state. That was how he had broken the bone wall with one punch and escaped. Apparently, Yu Wuxi hadn't expected that Zhuowen's Tao power would increase all of a sudden. Moreover, the Tao power had counteracted the pressure that he had deliberately released. Moreover, Devour, who he had thought was severely wounded, had recovered to his peak state when Zhuowen had let him out. He hadn't expected this at all. Although he knew that Zhuowen had a lot of heavenly domain star marrow, Devour's body was too big. If he wanted to heal him instantly, he would need a lot of heavenly domain star marrow. However, Zhuowen had helped Devour recover to his peak state in just a blink of an eye. Moreover, He had broken the bone wall that Yuwusi had set. Now, Yuwusi knew that he had underestimated the amount of heavenly domain star marrow that Zhuowen had. Instantly, thousands of thoughts crossed Yuwusi's mind. Then, he waved his sleeves, retrieving the bone wall around him. Then, he chased after Zhuowen. However, he soon realized that his soul consciousness couldn't find any trace of Zhuowen. Looking at the direction he's going, I think he wants to leave the star field. I should go to the heaven-receiving stone first. I must catch that little bastard. Yuwusi was a little anxious. After knowing that Zhuowen might have a huge amount of heavenly domain star marrow, he was even more anxious to capture Zhuowen and take everything that Zhuowen had. At the moment of life and death, my Dao power has advanced from the 6th level to the 7th level. A purple shadow glided across the starry sky. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with fear. Although there was only a difference of 1 level between the 7th and 6th level Dao Intense, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. The 7th, 8th, and 9th level Dao Intense were the higher realms of Dao Intense. With each step, the power of Dao Intense would be stronger, and the amplification effect would naturally be more terrifying. Now, Zhuowen had enhanced the Torch Dragon wings with the power of the 7th level Dao Intent, so his current speed was much faster than before. Zhuowen was confident that his current speed might be similar to that of Tai Ching and Yu Qing when they used the earth shrinking technique. Even Yu Wuxi's speed was not as fast as Zhuowen's current speed. Otherwise, Zhuowen would not have been able to shake off Yu Wuxi's soul consciousness so easily. I have to leave the star field as soon as possible, Zhuowen thought as he sped up again. Soon, he arrived at the dock where many airships were located. Zhuowen was naturally no stranger to this dock. Back then, he had taken High Heaven Sect's airship and landed near this dock from the Heaven Receiving Stone. However, this dock was relatively close to the star continent where High Heaven Sect was located, so the airship Zhuowen was on back then did not stop at this dock. Instead, it flew directly to the star continent where High Heaven Sect was located. The dock was bustling with people coming and going. Many cultivators were entering and exiting the dock in an orderly manner. The moment Zhuowen landed on the dock, a huge airship suddenly swept over from the void in front of him. This airship was completely black and had a strange appearance. At first glance, others would feel fear and trepidation. It's the airship of Dark Mirage Sect. Let's hide quickly. In the dock, many cultivators dodged the moment they saw the strange airship sweeping over with fear in their eyes. The black airship stopped at the dock, and then the cultivators on this airship disembarked one after another. When all the cultivators had disembarked, Zhuowen leisurely stepped onto the airship. Who are you? The airship has already docked. If you want to go to the Heaven Receiving Stone, wait for the next one. The moment Zhuowen entered the airship, a black-armored cultivator immediately looked at Zhuowen with extreme hostility. Zhuowen did not bother to pay attention to the black-armored cultivator. The glorious purple galaxy sword turned into a purple light and slashed at the man's neck. Poochie. Before this person could even finish speaking, his head was thrown high into the air. You're courting death. After seeing Zhuowen's actions, several black-armored cultivators behind him were shocked and furious. They summoned their respective divine artifacts and attacked Zhuowen. Unfortunately, how could these black-armored cultivators be a match for Zhuowen? In less than 10 breaths, all the cultivators on the airship were killed by Zhuowen. Moreover, all the corpses on the airship were thrown out by Zhuowen. He then entered the control cabin and controlled the airship to take off again and rush towards the Heaven Receiving Stone. On the dock, many cultivators stared blankly at the Mystic Illusion Sect cultivators on the airship that had been killed. They obviously did not expect that such a ruthless person would suddenly appear and snatch the Mystic Illusion Sect's airship the moment he arrived. Not long after Zhuowen drove the airship away from the dock, Yu Wuxi had already arrived. He saw the Mystic Illusion Sect cultivators' corpses piled up like a small mountain in the middle of the dock and his eyelids twitched. Then, under the mountain of corpses, there were a few lines of words written in blood. Old man, it's not that easy to kill this young master. Back when this young master first came to the Heaven Receiving Stone, I tore down your Mystic Illusion Pavilion. Today, I've caused trouble for your Mystic Illusion Sect. Presumably, The Mystic Illusion Pavilion on the Heaven Receiving Stone has been rebuilt. Now, this young master will tear down the Mystic Illusion Pavilion again. If you're not satisfied, come and bite this young master. Yu Wuxi's eyes were gloomy. He immediately picked an airship at the dock and drove the airship away from the dock. After driving the airship away, only a group of cultivators on the dock were left in an uproar. Moreover, there were many knowledgeable cultivators among them. Some cultivators even recognized Yu Wuxi's identity and were inexplicably shocked. Yu Wuxi was the Mystic Illusion sect's ancestor, a terrifying expert who had reached the 8 steps of the Void Sky Realm. Chapter 2064. Demolishing Dark Illusion Pavilion. The Receiving Heaven Stone was no longer as lively as it used to be. At this moment, it was deserted and deserted. Ever since the Receiving Heaven Stone was sealed, no cultivators had entered or exited it, so it was naturally devoid of life and desolate. In High Heaven Pavilion, Ren Yonggan was strolling around in boredom. Looking at the deserted environment, he could not help but shake his head and whisper, "Who is that Zhuowen?" He actually made the 8 great sects join forces to seal off the starfield's borders. Ren Yonggan had a complicated look in his eyes. The 8 great sects joining forces to arrest a rogue cultivator was definitely a major event that had never happened in the starfield. Although Ren Yonggan was a disciple of High Heaven sect, he still admired the rogue cultivator named Zhuowen. Speaking of Zhuowen, Ren Yonggan recalled Long Wen, who had personally demolished Dark Illusion Pavilion. Long Wen was also a rogue cultivator, and his cultivation was not weak. As soon as he arrived at the Receiving Heaven Stone, he killed a Dark Illusion sect disciple. Later, the conflict escalated and he even demolished Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ren Yonggan saw that Long Wen was a talent, so he wrote a recommendation letter, intending to recommend Long Wen to High Heaven sect. However, he did not expect that High Heaven sect's elder Bai would reject Long Wen. As for where Long Wen went, Ren Yonggan did not know. "Oh, isn't this our pavilion master Ren? Why are you leisurely strolling around the streets today?" A cold voice sounded, causing Ren Yonggan's footsteps to stop abruptly. Ren Yonggan stared at the black-armored man in front of him and the group of black-armored soldiers behind him and said coldly, "Yongtang, what I do has nothing to do with you, right?" The black-armored man named Yongtang was the new master of Dark Illusion Pavilion sent by Dark Illusion sect. He was slightly stronger than Ren Yonggan. Moreover, Dark Illusion sect knew that Ren Yonggan had helped Long Wen, so over the years, Dark Illusion Pavilion had been extremely arrogant, openly and secretly targeting High Heaven Pavilion. Ren Yonggan had reported this matter to High Heaven sect many times, but his news was like a stone sinking into the sea, not a single reply. "Haha, how is it unrelated? Back then, you were the one who protected the culprit who destroyed the Dark Illusion Pavilion, right? So many of our people have died. Do you dare say that it has nothing to do with you?" Yongtang mocked. Ren Yong'an's gaze was sharp as he stared coldly at Yongtang. "What is the meaning of this?" Yongtang laughed mockingly. "What do you mean? I don't mean anything by that. I just think that an eye for an eye. Back then, you shielded the murderer. Now that the murderer is nowhere to be found, this debt can only be settled with you, right?" Ren Yong'an's eyes were filled with anger as he said, "You want to fight?" As he spoke, Ren Yong'an's aura erupted from his entire body. At the same time, all of the cultivators from Towering Heaven Pavilion rushed onto the street, aggressively glaring at the Yongtang group across from them. Yongtang grinned, unwilling to be outdone. His imposing aura swept out like a hurricane. The auras of the two clashed, setting off a terrifying whirlwind that swept across the surroundings. The strange situation here immediately attracted the attention of the other encampment cultivators. One cultivator after another flew to the top of the encampment building and looked at the two groups of people on the street with interest. No one came out to stop them, nor did they want to stop them. The Star Domain's lockdown had caused the heaven-receiving boulder to be unusually cold and cheerless. If there was no entertainment, they would all be bored to death. Now that the Dark Mirage House and Towering Heaven Pavilion were about to fight, why would they want to stop such an opportunity to watch a good show? Whoosh! Just as the two groups were about to fight, a flying ship broke through the air and arrived above the heaven-receiving boulder in an instant. Hey! It's the Dark Mirage House's flying ship. Didn't this ship just fly away a few days ago? Why is it back? Everyone raised their heads and looked at the flying ship that had landed on the heaven-receiving boulder with puzzled eyes. Yongtang's brows furrowed slightly. His gaze landed on the flying ship with a strange expression. "I'll settle the score with you later," Yongtang said viciously before heading straight for the flying ship. He wanted to ask the pilot what was going on. Generally speaking, a flying ship would take several months to make a round trip. It was illogical for it to fly back after only a few days. The instant Yongtang's group arrived at the flying ship, the cabin door opened and a straight figure walked out. "Who are you? Why are you on my Dark Mirage sect's flying ship? And where are the others from my Dark Mirage sect?" Yongtang stared fixedly at the youth who walked down from the flying ship. He could not help but ask with furrowed brows. The person paused. He looked at Yongtang and asked indifferently, "You're a disciple of the Dark Mirage sect?" Yongtang raised his head and puffed out his chest. He said rather proudly, "Of course. I'm also the new house master of the Dark Mirage House." "Who are you? Tell me the truth." "So you're the housemaster of the Dark Mirage House. How about this? This one has something to give you. You better catch it." Zhuo smiled faintly. With a wave of his sleeve, a streak of purple light shot out at the speed of light towards Yongtang. Just as Yongtang was about to ask what it was, his expression changed drastically. He immediately summoned his natal divine artifact to block the purple light. Unfortunately, his divine artifact crumbled the moment it came into contact with the purple light. The purple light pierced through Yongtang's forehead like a hot knife through butter, killing him in one blow. Yongtang was merely a true god of 3 disasters, while Zhuo was already a void sky expert. Dealing with Yongtang with such cultivation was a piece of cake. Plop! Yongtang fell to the ground, dead. The surroundings fell into a long silence. No one expected that the young man who had just come out of the flying ship would kill Yongtang in one move. For a moment, no one could react. Brother Long Wen, on the street, Ren Yonggan muttered softly as he stared at the young man who killed Yongtang with a wave of his hand. The purple light didn't slow down at all after killing Yongtang. It continued to rush forward, passing through the group of black-armored cultivators behind Yongtang at an extremely fast speed. In just one breath, all of them were dead. This completely shocked the many cultivators who were watching the battle. This person is a void sky expert. He's definitely a void sky expert. The surrounding cultivators all had expressions of fear on their faces. Only a void sky expert could so cleanly dispose of Yongtang. There was no other possibility. Ren Yonggan, on the other hand, was astonished. Although he knew that Long Wen wasn't an ordinary person, he still didn't expect him to advance to the void sky so quickly. "Brother Long, you have to be careful. There's still a void sky expert guarding the Dark Illusion House. Ever since you destroyed the Dark Illusion House, the Dark Illusion sect sent him over. He's been staying in the Dark Illusion House ever since." After killing the Dark Illusion sect, Zhuo heard Ren Yong'an's voice transmission. Zhuo nodded and replied, "Brother Ren, this Long will need to leave the starfield for a period of time. Do you have a way to get me out of the starfield?" This time, Zhuo didn't plan to force his way out of the receiving heaven stone. Instead, he wanted to leave this place with Ren Yong'an's help. Although Zhuo didn't have a good impression of the High Heaven sect, he had a good impression of Ren Yong'an. If Ren Yong'an could really help him this time, he wouldn't be stingy. After all, he had a lot of resources, comparable to the great forces of the starfield. He was probably the only person in the entire starfield who could have so many resources. Ren Yong'an frowned slightly, revealing a hesitant expression. This time, the 8 great sects had joined forces to seal off the receiving heaven stone. It would be too difficult for him to take people out. Moreover, if this matter was exposed, the consequences would be disastrous. If Brother Ren finds it difficult, this Long won't force you. Zhuo naturally saw the hesitation on Ren Yong'an's face and transmitted his voice again. Ren Yong'an grit his teeth and said, Brother Long is too polite. This time, this Ren will risk everything and help you. Zhuowen revealed a look of ecstasy at the corners of his mouth as he replied, "Many thanks, Brother Ren." Saying so, Zhuowen rushed to Ren Yong'an's side and whispered, "I hope Brother Ren can help me quickly. I'm in a hurry." Zhuowen could clearly feel that Yu Wu Sai's flying ship was getting closer and closer to the receiving heaven stone. If Yu Wu Sai arrived here, it would be very difficult for him to escape. Brother Long, rest assured. This method is very fast. However, I need a key. The key is with the Void Sky Master in the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ren Yong'an glanced at Zhuowen. Don't worry. Let me tear down the Dark Illusion Pavilion first. Zhuowen waved his hand and rushed towards the Dark Illusion Pavilion. This guy, he's so bold. Ren Yong'an was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Zhuowen had also reached the Void Sky Realm, he was afraid that his cultivation level was not very high. The Void Sky Master guarding the Dark Illusion Pavilion had reached the Void Sky Realm 3 times. Ren Yong'an didn't think that Zhuowen would gain anything by barging into the Dark Illusion Pavilion. On the other hand, many cultivators on both sides of the street swarmed over excitedly and followed Zhuowen. Zhuowen soon arrived in front of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ever since Zhuowen had torn it down, the rebuilt Dark Illusion Pavilion looked much brighter and more upright. Moreover, the restrictions inside were much stronger. Zhuowen waved his sleeve and immediately summoned 24 golden no-beginning demon swords. A terrifying black-gold killing intent vortex emerged from the combination of the no-beginning demon golden sword and blasted against the barrier of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Boom! 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 In an instant, the restrictions on the surface of the Dark Illusion Pavilion collapsed like clay chickens and pottery dogs. The vortexes of killing intent formed by the golden no-beginning demon swords continued to wreak havoc inside the Dark Illusion Pavilion. The huge Dark Illusion Pavilion was instantly torn to pieces. Which daring bastard dares to tear down this old man's Dark Illusion Pavilion? A loud shout suddenly came from the depths of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Then, a terrifying hand slammed into the vortexes of killing intent and repelled them. The Lord of the Dark Illusion Pavilion has made his move. The surrounding cultivators who had rushed over all had grave expressions. They all knew that the Void Sky Master was not to be trifled with. It was precisely because of the support of this Void Sky Master that the Dark Illusion Pavilion had been extremely arrogant and despotic all these years. Chapter 2065. Suddenly. It was an old man in a dark blue Taoist robe. His hair was mottled with black and white, and his face was green. He looked quite strange. The old man glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you destroying my phantom tower?" With the old man's character, he would have taught Zhuowen a lesson as soon as he arrived. However, after noticing the void heaven aura on Zhuowen's body, he did not act rashly. Zhuowen stood proudly and said indifferently, "I'm Long Wen. I'm here to destroy your phantom tower." After saying that, Zhuowen waved his sleeve. The 24 golden demon swords turned into a vortex of killing intent again and swept toward the old man. The old man's eyes were extremely dark. He knew that the young man in front of him was here to destroy his phantom tower. At the same time, he also heard the name Long Wen. His eyes were filled with killing intent, but he was inexplicably surprised. He remembered that Ren Yong'an had said that Zhuowen was only a true god when he first entered the receiving heaven stone. It had only been a few years, but he had already advanced to the void heaven realm. Wasn't his cultivation speed too fast? However, the current situation did not allow the old man to think too much. The terrifying vortex of killing intent was already in front of him. It's actually Long Wen. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on entering it. You think you're invincible after advancing to the void heaven realm? How ridiculous. The old man in the Taoist robe sneered. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying energy turned into a giant hand and slammed into the vortex of killing intent. Rumble. Violent energy overflowed in all directions. Soon after, the giant hand and the vortex of killing intent exploded into a ring-shaped airwave, creating countless vacuum zones and erupting with terrifying energy. The huge receiving heaven stone seemed to be trembling. The old man in the Taoist robe groaned and retreated continuously. On the other hand, Zhuowen was as immovable as a mountain. You! The old man in the Taoist robe was frightened. The Taoist-robed old man revealed a look of fear. The powerful strength that Zhuowen had displayed had greatly surprised him. Die! Zhuowen stomped his right foot. Another 12 golden demon swords flew out of his spiritual ring and slammed into the old man in the Taoist robe. The Daoist-robed old man no longer held back. He took out his natal divine artifact and summoned the illusory heavenly bridge at the same time. His aura instantly increased by several times. Bang bang bang! When they collided again, the old man in the Taoist robe was not afraid at all. Instead, he suppressed the vortex of killing intent. The old man in the Taoist robe laughed out loud. He was about to mock Zhuowen when the coldness in the corner of Zhuowen's mouth became more and more intense. Whoosh! Whoosh! Zhuowen once again released the 12 no-beginning demonic golden swords. The terrifying killing intent vortex suddenly increased in intensity, breaking through the layers of defenses before the Daoist-robed old man. The Daoist-robed old man hurriedly retreated while simultaneously strengthening his defenses. Zhuowen continued to move forward, arriving at the back of the whirlpool and taking out the remaining 24 demon golden swords. Bang bang bang! When all of the no-beginning devil golden swords were stacked together, the vortex of killing intent that was produced was extremely powerful. The old man's defense was like a clay chicken and pottery dog, completely useless. Poochie! The old man in the Taoist robe did not even have time to react before the vortex of killing intent completely enveloped him and tore him into pieces. Zhuowen stepped onto the illusory heavenly bridge of the old man in the Taoist robe. He raised the purple sword in his right hand above his head and slashed down fiercely. A terrifying and huge purple moon rose slowly and then suddenly fell down, smashing onto the illusory heavenly bridge and completely shattering it. At this moment, the surroundings were silent. The battle between Zhuowen and the old man in the Taoist robe was too short. It was over in just a few breaths. Originally, everyone thought that this would be a stalemate between a fierce battle. But now, beyond their expectations, the old man in the Taoist robe who had ascended 3 times in the illusory heavenly bridge was actually dealt with so cleanly by Zhuowen. Ren Yonggan was even more stunned on the spot. Looking at that proud figure, his eyes were full of complexity. Brother Ren, this should be the key you mentioned, right? I'll leave it to you this time. Zhuowen rushed to Ren Yonggan's side and handed over a key that was emitting a 7-colored light to Ren Yonggan as he said softly. Ren Yonggan took the key, nodded solemnly, and immediately said, Brother Long, come with me. Saying that, Ren Yonggan took Zhuowen and walked straight towards High Heaven Pavilion. After entering High Heaven Pavilion, Ren Yonggan brought Zhuowen to a secret basement of High Heaven Pavilion. This basement was surrounded by piles of yellow boulders, looking quite simple and gorgeous. In the center of the basement, there was a huge spirit array, but this spirit array was dim at the moment, obviously lacking energy supply. Brother Long, the entrance to the receiving heaven stone has been completely sealed by the experts of the 8 great sects. It is impossible for you to go out, but my High Heaven Pavilion has another shortcut, and that is this spirit array. This spirit array was left behind by the Pavilion Master of High Heaven Pavilion. This person has a fanatical interest in spirit arrays and is even more unruly. The receiving heaven stone was also sealed, but it was not as strong as this time. At that time, the Pavilion Master was very unhappy because he was the Pavilion Master. Since the receiving heaven stone was sealed, he had to stay on the receiving heaven stone and wait for the seal to end before he could go out. Otherwise, he would be treated as a spy. In order to slip out, the Pavilion Master arranged this spirit array. It is said that this spirit array can directly leave the star field without going through the receiving heaven stone. Ren Yonggan came to the side of the spirit array and patiently explained. Did the Pavilion Master try this spirit array? Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he asked curiously. Ren Yonggan was a little embarrassed as he smiled and said, No. After he finished arranging this transmission array, the seal was lifted, so he didn't need to use this transmission array to leave the receiving heaven stone. As for this key, it is actually the key to open this spirit array. At that time, Elder Shu Tian of the Dark Illusion sect, in order to retaliate against my High Heaven Pavilion for helping Brother Long, caused a lot of trouble here. He saw that I valued this key very much and wanted to snatch it away, so Zhuowen nodded and didn't pursue the matter with Ren Yonggan, saying, "Can we begin now?" "Yes," Ren Yonggan said as he threw the 7-colored key into the spirit array. Then, the key automatically drilled into the groove in the center of the spirit array. Suddenly, the dim and lightless formation burst out with a blazing 7-colored radiance. Zhuowen knew that the formation had been activated. Suddenly, Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He immediately grabbed Ren Yong'an's shoulder and stepped into the 7-colored spirit array. Rumble. The moment Zhuowen entered the 7-colored spirit array, the entire High Heaven Pavilion erupted with a terrifying tremor. Soon after, High Heaven Pavilion was destroyed and all the cultivators inside were killed. The basement was also directly opened by this terrifying force, revealing Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan who had entered the spirit array. "Zhuowen, you little bastard, you can't escape." The moment the basement was opened, an aura as vast as the sea suddenly appeared in the basement. The entire basement couldn't withstand this terrifying aura and countless fine cracks appeared. "Open the teleportation array," Zhuowen shouted at Ren Yonggan. Ren Yonggan trembled. This aura was too terrifying, making him feel as if he was facing the might of the heavens. In front of this aura, it was as if the entire sky was collapsing. Now, Zhuowen yelled at him, finally making him sober up. He didn't ask who this person was but immediately activated the teleportation array. Suddenly, a terrifying teleportation array wrapped around the two of them. "Want to leave? Do you think it's possible?" Yu Wuxi's voice resounded once again. Then, a terrifying giant hand, as if the dome of the sky was collapsing, instantly pressed down and smashed on the 7-colored teleportation array. Zhuowen's eyes darkened as he immediately released the black-clothed Zhuowen. Roar! The black-clothed Zhuowen revealed the incomparably huge true body of Devour, and its pillar-like claws met the terrifying giant hand. Crack! In an instant, the terrifying collision set off countless astral winds. Then, numerous cracks appeared on the surface of the huge receiving heaven boulder. All the cultivators on the receiving heaven boulder were terrified. They floated in the air and looked at the receiving heaven boulder, which was already riddled with holes. Poochie! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. Devour's claws were completely destroyed. The demonic fog around its huge body dispersed, revealing countless bloody scars on its body. It looked as if it would shatter at any moment. Although Devour's state was quite miserable, it had still managed to block Yu Wuxi's terrifying attack. "Let's go." Zhuowen immediately put away Devour. Then, the 7-colored teleportation array teleported Ren Yonggan and Zhuowen away from this place. After Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan were teleported away, Yu Wuxi, with a gloomy face, slowly landed on the ruins of High Heaven Pavilion. He quietly looked at the teleportation array that had completely lost its brilliance. He knew that the other side of the teleportation array had been completely destroyed by Zhuowen. Even if he reactivated the teleportation array, it would be impossible for him to teleport out. "Little bastard!" Yu Wuxi took a deep breath and roared towards the sky. His roar reverberated endlessly on the receiving heaven boulder. As soon as Yu Wuxi arrived on the receiving heaven boulder, he discovered that the Dark Fantasy Pavilion had been destroyed. Then, he learned from the crowd that the person who destroyed the Dark Fantasy Pavilion had been brought into High Heaven Pavilion. So, he mercilessly destroyed High Heaven Pavilion in an attempt to capture Zhuowen. However, he never expected that he would be one step too late. There was actually a teleportation array hidden under High Heaven Pavilion. The cultivators on the receiving heaven boulder quickly distanced themselves from Yu Wuxi and stared at this terrifying figure with dread. Chapter 2066. The Land of the Far West. This was a huge meteorite belt. The meteorite belt was like a halo around a satellite, slowly rotating in a circle. A 7-colored light appeared on a huge meteorite in the center, and under the 7-colored light, there was a 7-colored array. Within the 7-colored light, 2 wretched figures appeared. Poochie. One of the white-clothed youths suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the side of the array. He immediately took out a purple sword and completely destroyed the array that was glowing with rainbow light. The other middle-aged man in a blue robe also fell to the side, but his condition was much better than the young man in white. These 2 people were naturally Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan, who had left the star field through the transmission array. Ren Yong'an's face was extremely ugly. When he found that the expert chasing Long Wen was so terrifying, he had already regretted it. But it was too late to regret now. The High Heaven Pavilion had been destroyed by the unknown expert, and he had followed Zhuowen out of the transmission array. Returning to the receiving heaven stone was naturally unrealistic. Now Ren Yonggan was a little distressed. Brother Long, is your real name Zhuowen? Ren Yonggan seemed to think of something and suddenly asked Zhuowen. The voice had called Zhuowen's real name before, so he also knew Zhuowen's real name. At this moment, Zhuowen's face was pale. He took out a jade bottle and drank a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence, and his face became much rosier. Brother Ren, this jade bottle contains Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Take it. If it weren't for you this time, my life might be in danger. Zhuowen handed the jade bottle to Ren Yonggan. But Ren Yong'an's entire person was dumbfounded. He held the jade bottle in his hand, his entire body trembling with excitement. Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. When he was in Zhongyu, the 8 great sect masters fought for 2 drops of Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. Now, he actually obtained a whole bottle of Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. This was like a dream for him. Ren Yonggan gently opened the bottle cork, and suddenly a terrifying medicinal power soared into the sky, forming a huge phantom above him. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Ren Yonggan closed the bottle cork, took a deep breath, and cupped his hands to Zhuowen. Thank you Long. Brother Zhuo. Ren Yonggan wanted to call Zhuowen Brother Long, but thinking of Zhuowen's real name, he changed the way he addressed him. At this moment, Ren Yonggan had already forgotten that Zhuowen had destroyed the High Heaven Pavilion. There was only a bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence in his hand. The Heavenly Domain Star Essence. The value of this bottle of Heavenly Domain Starry Sky Essence was almost immeasurable. Even if Ren Yonggan had to die now, he would feel that it was worth it. Yonggan Yonggan. Yonggan Yonggan. Yonggan Yonggan. Zhuowen took out a Void Ascension pill from his spirit ring and handed it to Ren Yonggan as he said with a smile. At this moment, Ren Yonggan was flattered to receive the Void Ascending pill, and the unhappiness in his heart suddenly disappeared. With the Void Ascending pill and Heavenly Domain Star Essence, even if he betrayed High Heaven Sect, he would still have profited. Thank you, Brother Zhuo. Many thanks. Ren Yonggan said quickly. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, Brother Ren is too polite. This time, it was all thanks to you that I was able to escape. These things should be given to you. This time, Zhuowen was indeed very grateful to Ren Yonggan. If it weren't for Ren Yonggan, he really would have been finished. He was very willing to take out a bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. After all, his life was much more important than this bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Zhuowen looked at the surrounding asteroid belt and asked, Where is this place? Ren Yonggan carefully put away the Heavenly Domain Star Essence and Void Ascending pill before immediately taking out the star chart from his spirit ring and looking at it for a while. What's wrong? Zhuowen could not help but ask in surprise when he saw the strange look in Ren Yong'an's eyes. Ren Yonggan said, Brother Zhuo, this place is close to the westernmost part of the Great Brahma Domain. It doesn't seem to be far from the waning waxing moons. I really didn't expect the power of the transmission array to be so powerful that it could teleport the 2 of us so far. Zhuowen also showed a strange look. He also didn't expect that the transmission array hidden in High Heaven Pavilion could teleport them so far. Wasn't it comparable to the ancient transmission array? The waning waxing moons is not far from here, so can we go in now? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Ren Yonggan looked around and smiled bitterly. Brother Zhuo, the westernmost part of the Heaven Domain has a terrifying magnetic field. This magnetic field will interfere with the direction of our divine sense. Although we know the geographical location of the waning waxing moons, if we go in blindly, we will most likely lose our way. Zhuowen frowned and said, "Then what should we do?" Now, Zhuowen was a little anxious. He clearly knew the geographical location of the waning waxing moons, but he could not act rashly. Moreover, Ren Yonggan was not lying. Just now, he had used his divine sense to determine the direction, but every time he determined the direction was different. He knew that his divine sense was indeed affected by an external object. And this external object should be the magnetic field that Ren Yonggan was talking about. We must first enter a certain galaxy or star continent in the far west. According to my impression, the far west is an extremely chaotic place. It is the true forbidden area of the Great Brahma domain. It is said that even the Supreme Great Brahma can't control this area. Ren Yonggan said worriedly. Although Ren Yonggan had never been to the far west, he knew the notoriety of this area, so he was worried about his own situation. Even Great Brahma can't control it. This far west. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He was very curious in his heart. Since Great Brahma was the master of the heaven domain, he generally had absolute control over the entire heaven domain. But now, Ren Yonggan was saying that even Great Brahma could not control the far west. Could it be that there was something special about the far west? Of course, Ren Yonggan was not too sure about the specifics of the far west. Ren Yonggan had only heard about the far west. Zhuowen summoned Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan from the spirit ring. They had already escaped the star field, so he naturally had no reason to put them back into the spirit ring. After all, they could not cultivate in the spirit ring. Big Brother Zhuo, thank you for saving my aunt this time. Yun Chuyu immediately stepped forward and looked at Zhuowen gratefully. Yin Bingyun came to Yun Chuyu's side and bowed to Zhuowen in an extremely formal manner, saying, "Bingyun will not dare to forget your life-saving grace." Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, "The two of you don't have to be so formal. Actually, we are not out of danger. This time, Brother Ren and I," Zhuowen slowly recounted what had happened. When he finished, Yin Bingyun frowned and said, "We actually came to the far west. Could it be that Sect Master Yin is very familiar with the far west?" Zhuowen looked at Yin Bingyun and asked. Yin Bingyun shook her head and said, "I don't know too much about it. However, I once met a senior who had traveled to the far west. He once said that the far west is extremely chaotic, and it is very difficult to travel through the far west with just a star chart. If we can't use our divine sense and star charts, then what do we need to travel through the far west?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. Flying ships. The flying ships of the far west are very developed, even more developed and powerful than the starfield. It is said that the most powerful flying ships built by the cultivators of the far west have cannons that can even kill the strongest powerhouses of the void sky. Yin Bingyun's words were shocking, and her words shocked everyone present. The cultivators of the void sky could be said to be the top powerhouses of the Great Brahma domain. It was incredible that a mere flying ship could kill such a powerhouse. "Look, there seems to be something flying over there." Suddenly, Ren Yonggan pointed to the starry sky on the left and said. Zhuowen and the others looked up and indeed saw a black shadow rushing over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived and stopped outside the meteorite belt. Only then did Zhuowen see clearly that this black shadow was actually an incomparably huge pitch-black flying ship. The surface of this flying ship was covered with black scales that looked like dragon scales. If one didn't look carefully, they would think that this was a black dragon flying in the starry sky. Whether it was the shape or the aura, Zhuowen found that this flying ship was much more advanced than the flying ships of the 10 major sects in the starfield. It seemed that Yin Bingyun was right. The flying ship technology of the far west was indeed much more powerful than that of the starfield. The flying ship that had stopped opened a hatch and 5 cultivators walked out. The one in the lead was a burly man in dragon-scale armor. He walked straight towards Zhuowen. The burly man sized up Zhuowen and the others, and his gaze lingered on Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan. Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu, in particular, were extraordinarily beautiful. Although their faces were covered by veils, it still couldn't hide the extraordinary temperament of the two women. The 5 of you are refugees, right? Our captain found the 5 of you and planned to help you. The burly man said indifferently. Thank you, brother. Ren Yonggan hurriedly said with a smile. The corners of the burly man's mouth curled up slightly and he continued, I think you know the rules, right? Rules? Zhuowen asked with a frown. Chapter 2067. Lan Gui brother, the 5 of us are cultivators from outside the land of the Far West. When we came to the land of the Far West this time, our flying ship was accidentally destroyed. The 5 of us were lucky and escaped with our lives, so we don't know the rules here. Ren Yonggan said with a smile. The burly man responded with an O. Immediately, he sized up the 5 of them again and said, in that case, I will tell you the rules. If you want to board the ship and leave this meteorite belt, you need to pay a fare. Our captain will not let you come up and take up space for nothing. Zhuowen was relieved when he heard that. If this person let them board the ship, then there would be a problem. Zhuowen felt that it was normal that they had to pay a fare to board the ship. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. How much do you need? Ren Yonggan asked. 10,000 divine stones per person. The sturdy man said indifferently. Zhuowen frowned slightly. Although he felt that the ticket was a little expensive, there was nothing he could do. After all, they could only leave this place on the ship. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to determine the direction, so it was impossible for them to walk aimlessly. The sturdy man's expression eased when he saw Zhuowen hand over 50,000 divine stones without hesitation. Then, he led Zhuowen's group into the flying ship. After passing through dozens of aisles, the sturdy man brought the 5 of them to a hall that wasn't very big. There were soft ring-shaped chairs in the hall, but at this moment, the chairs in the hall were filled with cultivators, so there were no empty seats. Zhuowen frowned as he looked around the hall. There weren't even any seats in the hall. Could it be that they had to stand? Ren Yonggan, Yin Bingyun, and the other 3 also had similar expressions. They had paid 50,000 divine stones, but there weren't even any seats, let alone the single room they wanted. After bringing Zhuowen's group of 5, the sturdy man left the hall. He didn't have any intention of paying any attention to Zhuowen's group. Zhuowen looked around the hall and found that most of the people here were true gods. There were also a few void sky cultivators, but they were very few. Moreover, very few true gods dared to casually approach these void sky cultivators. This resulted in these void sky cultivators occupying a rather large empty space. The arrival of Zhuowen's group of 5 attracted the attention of many cultivators. Of course, these cultivators were not paying attention to Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan. Instead, they were paying attention to Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan, who were standing beside Zhuowen. Regardless of whether it was Yin Bingyun or Yun Chuyu, just Hong Shan's beauty alone was incomparably alluring. In particular, the flirtatious glint that occasionally flashed through her beautiful eyes caused many cultivators' hearts to heat up. They wanted nothing more than to ruthlessly ravage her. Although Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu had veils covering their faces, just by looking at their delicate bodies and temperaments, one could tell that these 2 women were definitely not ordinary. They were many times better than the ordinary female cultivators in the hall. A man in his 30s wearing a blue robe sat upright on a huge empty seat. He opened his eyes and directly ignored Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan. His gaze landed on Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu. This person sized up Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun in an extremely presumptuous manner. Suddenly, he grinned and said, "Beauties, take off the veils on your faces and let me have a good look." When the surrounding cultivators saw this blue-robed man, they all revealed expressions of fear. Lan Gui has taken a fancy to these 2 female cultivators. I'm afraid these 2 women will suffer. What a pity for these 2 delicate beauties. Everyone's eyes revealed looks of pity. This blue-robed man was called Lan Gui. He was one of the few void sky cultivators in the hall and was extremely powerful. Moreover, this Lan Gui had an extremely disgusting hobby, which was to play with women. The more beautiful the woman, the more miserable Lan Gui would play with her, and he would even enjoy it. During this journey, Many female cultivators had been forcefully played to death by Lan Gui. These were all seen by the surrounding cultivators. However, Lan Gui was too powerful. Although many cultivators could not bear it, they only dared to be angry and did not dare to say anything. Now, Lan Gui had specifically asked the two female cultivators who had just entered to take off their veils. Everyone knew what Lan Gui would do next, so they could only silently mourn for the two female cultivators. As for the other void sky cultivators, they were not surprised at all. They did not even glance over. Instead, they sat cross-legged on the spot and silently cultivated. Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun frowned slightly. Their beautiful eyes revealed disgust. The two women's observation skills were not weak. Naturally, they could see the trace of lust in Lan Gui's eyes. They could guess that this person's intentions were definitely not pure. What? Are the two beauties shy? There's no need to be shy. Since you're shy, I'll have to take the initiative. Lan Gui licked his lips and immediately stretched out his right hand. Terrifying energy turned into a huge hand that was the size of a cattail leaf fan. It instantly enveloped Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun. However, just as the huge hand approached Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun, there was a flash of violet light, and the hand collapsed. Lan Gui's eyes narrowed. His gaze finally landed on Zhuowen, who wielded a violet sword. He said fearfully, "Sir, what is the meaning of this? How dare you get in the way of me?" Although Lan Gui was lustful, he was not an idiot. When Zhuowen attacked earlier, he knew that he was also a void sky cultivator. It seemed like he had bitten off more than he could chew this time. Kneel down and apologize to the two of them. Zhuowen looked down at Lan Gui as he spoke, and all of the cultivators present fell into a daze. The entire place was filled with astonishment, and even a pin drop could be heard. Even Lan Gui was stunned. He even suspected that he had misheard. When Zhuowen attacked earlier, he could tell that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the first step of the void sky realm. His cultivation was almost the same as his own, yet he dared to speak so arrogantly. Wasn't he a little too conceited? The other void sky cultivators all opened their eyes and silently stared at Zhuowen and Lan Gui. "What if I say no?" Lan Gui sneered. Spurt. As soon as Lan Gui finished speaking, the violet light swept past his right arm like lightning. Afterwards, blood sprayed into the air as his right arm was instantly severed. "Kneel down." Zhuowen arrived with his sword. He calmly stared at Lan Gui, who was staring blankly at his severed right arm. The surrounding cultivators all gaped. Wasn't this young man a little too ferocious? He had actually severed Lan Gui's right arm without anyone noticing. Even the other void sky cultivators had grave expressions on their faces. They hadn't clearly seen how Zhuowen had severed Lan Gui's right arm. ****. Lan Gui came to his senses and roared. His eyes were as red as blood as he immediately summoned his natal artifact. Lan Gui's natal artifact was a skull forged from jade. As soon as the skull was summoned, a gust of wind and a rain of blood swept toward them, sending chills down their spines. As soon as the skull appeared, it opened its mouth wide and flew toward Zhuowen. Countless eerie evil spirits rushed out of the skull. Zhuowen discovered that these evil spirits were all beautiful and graceful women. It seemed like Lan Gui was indeed a bastard. After toying with the women's souls, he collected them into the skull and cultivated them into evil spirits to enhance the power of his natal artifact. Zhuowen's gaze was ghastly cold as an incomparably enormous divine sense suddenly erupted, transforming into countless branches that bombarded the bodies of those evil spirits. Zhuowen's divine soul was truly too powerful, and evil spirits were illusory beings. Divine sense could cause considerable damage to them. In just an instant, all the evil spirits in the surroundings were wiped away by Zhuowen's consciousness. Afterwards, Zhuowen swung his sword and struck the jade-colored skull, sending it flying without any resistance. The violet sword did not slow down at all and instantly severed Lan Gui's limbs. Thump! Lan Gui collapsed in a pool of blood as he constantly struggled. His eyes were filled with viciousness and malice. Zhuowen kicked Lan Gui to the side, then led Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others to occupy Lan Gui's position without any scruples. Logically speaking, with Lan Gui's cultivation, he should have been able to recover very quickly even if his limbs had been severed. However, Zhuowen's violet sword contained the power of Dao. This power could suppress Lan Gui's recovery abilities. Although Lan Gui desperately circulated the energy within him in an attempt to regrow his limbs, it was to no avail. Moreover, his wounds failed to close up. Blood constantly poured out, basically forming a small pool of blood in the surroundings. "What have you done to me?" Lan Gui roared out. Zhuowen stared at Lan Gui indifferently and said, "If you want to die, you can keep screaming." Lan Gui sensed the chilling killing intent in Zhuowen's gaze. His face froze, and he immediately shut up. However, as he continued to lose blood, Lan Yu felt weaker and weaker. He was powerless. The surrounding cultivators kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Zhuowen, who was sitting on Blue Ghost's seat. They knew that this person was vicious. He had severed Lan Gui's limbs as soon as he had arrived, and he was so powerful as well. They obviously did not dare to provoke him. What's happened? Why is it so messy here? Chapter 2068. Young Master Warrelis Captain Liu, this person has no regard for the law. He actually attacked me in this cabin and cut off my limbs. He's simply audacious and unforgivable. Seeing the burly man enter, Lan Gui acted as if he had seen a life-saving straw. His eyes shone as he hurriedly complained. Ren Yonggan, Yun Chuyu, and the others were furious. Just as they were about to defend themselves, Captain Liu coldly snorted and interrupted their words. Captain Liu's sinister gaze fell on Zhuowen. He grinned and said, "You're quite bold, newcomer. You've caused such a big mess as soon as you arrived. I have a whole new level of respect for you." With that, Captain Liu walked straight towards Zhuowen and finally stopped in front of Zhuowen. He looked down at Zhuowen and continued, "Now, come with me." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and slowly stood up. He did not refuse and followed Captain Liu out of the hall. After all, Zhuowen had just entered this cabin. He still needed to rely on this flying ship to head to the nearby continent, so he did not want to fall out with the people on this flying ship. Otherwise, if they threw him out of the flying ship, he would quickly lose his way. Captain Liu led Zhuowen out of the hall and came to a remote corner. He looked at Zhuowen indifferently and said, "You're very bold. Do you know what happens to cultivators who violate the rules of our divine continent?" The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up. He took out a bottle of fire spirit juice from his spirit ring and handed it to Captain Liu. He said, "I was impulsive just now. I think Captain Liu is a reasonable person." Fire spirit juice. Captain Liu opened the bottle and sniffed it lightly. His eyes revealed surprise. Fire spirit juice could temporarily increase one's comprehension. Even for void sky cultivators, the effect was not bad. Captain Liu's cultivation was at the peak of void sky, so this fire spirit juice would have a great effect on him breaking through his shackles. Captain Liu put away the fire spirit juice with a troubled expression. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. He knew that Captain Liu was complaining that the fire spirit juice was too little. Zhuowen also knew how to behave. He took out 3 more bottles of fire spirit juice from his spirit ring and handed them to Captain Liu. Putting away the 3 bottles, Captain Liu revealed a satisfied expression and said, "Since this is your first offense, then I won't pursue this matter anymore. Be careful next time." Captain Liu was about to leave when he was stopped by Zhuowen. "Is there anything else?" Captain Liu asked with a frown. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "Captain Liu, your god Liu is so big. It shouldn't be that you don't have an independent cabin, right?" Captain Liu looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and grinned. "Of course, but the 5 of you are refugees. You don't have tickets for God of Lu beforehand. Naturally, you don't have the right to enjoy the cabin of God of Lu." "Can't I buy it now?" Zhuowen asked. The smile on Captain Liu's face deepened. He said, "Of course you can buy it, but it's much more expensive than the outside world. 1 ticket costs 10 million divine stones. Do you want to buy it?" Zhuowen cursed in his heart and said in a low voice, "Yes, and I want to buy 5 ticket." Captain Liu looked at Zhuo Wen from head to toe and was surprised. Obviously, he didn't expect the guy in front of him to be rich. When he thought about how this guy could take out 4 bottles of fire spirit juice at once, Captain Liu felt relieved. Sure, I happen to have 5 tickets with me. As long as you pay, I can give you the tickets and order someone to take you to the corresponding cabin, Captain Liu said calmly. Zhuo Wen paid the 50 million godly stones without any hesitation and received 5 tickets for the ship. When he returned to the hall, Lan Gui was still lying in a pool of blood like a dead dog. Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Hong Shan were nowhere to be seen, while Ren Yonggan was lying to the side in a sorry state, constantly twitching and struggling. After Zhuo Wen returned, the hall immediately fell silent. However, Lan Gui chuckled coldly and said, "Serves you right. Those 3 delicate beauties of yours are going to be finished as well. Perhaps they'll end up in a much more miserable state than when they fell into my hands." Zhuo Wen arrived by Ren Yong'an's side and helped him up. He asked in a low voice, "Brother Ren, what happened?" Ren Yong'an coughed up a mouthful of blood and said in a slightly dispirited manner, "Brother Zhuo, not long after you and Captain Liu left, several cultivators with powerful presences appeared at some point in time. They restrained Miss Chu and the others without any explanation and took them away. I resisted with all my might, but I wasn't strong enough. I was heavily injured." Speaking of this, Ren Yong'an's face was filled with shame. Clearly, he felt that he had let Zhuo Wen down. Zhuo Wen's gaze was cold. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Just as Zhuo Wen had been taken away, there were people waiting for an opportunity to come in and kidnap him. These cultivators were probably in cahoots with Captain Liu. "Serves you right. Haha, serves you right." Lan Gui laughed wantonly and even mocked him. Splat. Unfortunately, a purple sword directly sliced off Lan Gui's mouth. Afterwards, Zhuo Wen slowly arrived before Lan Gui. Lan Gui whimpered loudly as he stared at Zhuo Wen in fear. His mouth had been sliced off, so he could not even speak clearly. However, from his whimpering, Lan Gui was probably begging for mercy. Zhuo Wen pressed a hand against Lan Gui's head, and his terrifying divine sense violently invaded Lan Gui's soul. He began to carefully search through his memories. Zhuo Wen was not familiar with the group of cultivators who had taken Yun Chuyu and the other 2 away. However, Lan Gui had been on the God of Lu for a long time, so he should know a little. Not long after, Zhuo Wen removed his right hand with a grave expression. From Lan Gui's memories, Zhuo Wen discovered that the group of cultivators who had taken Yun Chuyu and the other 2 away was a young cultivator named Young Master Warrelis. This young Master Warrelis' cultivation was ordinary. It was said that he had just condensed the Void Sky Bridge. However, there were many experts around him. The strongest guard's cultivation had even reached the 3rd step of the Void Sky Bridge. He was quite famous on the God of Lu. Not only that, it was said that the force behind this young Master Warrelis was not small. The destination of the God of Lu this time was the Myriad Magnet Sea. The Myriad Magnet Sea was the core of the far west land. It was filled with a more terrifying magnetic field than other places. Because the magnetic field was too terrifying and the range was huge, the magnetic fields constantly collided with each other, forming a vast ocean. It looked exceptionally strange. The Myriad Magnet Sea was also an extremely terrifying and dangerous place. There were many types of giant astral beasts here. Powerful space beasts could easily tear apart ordinary void sky cultivators. Furthermore, the cultivators who entered the Myriad Magnet Sea would not only lose their sense of direction, but if they were not careful, the powerful magnetic field would affect the cultivator's soul, causing cultivators whose souls were not strong enough to immediately lose consciousness and be unable to resist. Once this cultivator was discovered by the giant starry sky beast in the Myriad Magnet Sea, he would definitely die without a doubt. Moreover, the Great Brahma region's most famous danger zone, the waning moon crescent, was located in the depths of the Myriad Magnet Sea. If one wanted to enter the waning moon crescent, they had to enter the Myriad Magnet Sea. Therefore, this time, Zhuo Wen and the others entered the God Lu as a free ride. Within the Sea of Magnetism, there were countless giant meteorites that were not affected by the magnetic field. The surface area of these meteorites was extremely large. The large ones were no smaller than the star continents in the star field, and the small ones were slightly larger than the average life planets. Due to the existence of these meteorites, there were countless cultivators and rogue cultivators who came to explore the sea of magnetism. Moreover, they formed various forces within the sea of magnetism. Young Master Warrelis was the son of the Palace Master of Warrelis Palace, a rather famous force in the sea of magnetism. Young Master Warrelis' behavior was extremely unrestrained. He was addicted to dual cultivation. Every time he took a liking to a female cultivator, regardless of her background, he would basically kidnap her and forcefully seize her primordial yin. Moreover, his dual cultivation was not the kind that benefited both parties, but a one-sided and domineering one. The cultivation and blood essence of the woman who dual cultivated with him would be completely sucked dry by his domineering dual cultivation method. In the end, she would become a lifeless corpse. It could be said that young Master Warrelis was an existence even more disgusting than Blue Ghost. Coincidentally, Blue Ghost was young Master Warrelis' underling, the so-called errand boy. "What a scumbag," Zhuowen muttered, then completely strangled Blue Ghost. Seeing Zhuowen casually kill Blue Ghost, no one in the hall dared to breathe loudly. "Brother Ren, how about following me to the cabin?" Zhuowen's eyes revealed killing intent as he looked at Ren Yonggan behind him. Ren Yonggan revealed a hesitant expression, but when he recalled the earth-shattering and terrifying deeds that Zhuowen had done in the starfield, he also knew that Zhuowen was not simple, so he nodded and agreed. Leading Ren Yonggan out of the hall, Zhuowen went straight to the cabin on the upper level. The crowded hall they were in was the lowest level of the God of Lu. It was also the worst place. Usually, it was used to store goods and other miscellaneous items. Very few people lived here. The real cabins were on the upper level, and the higher up, the better the cabins were. Young Master Warrelis' cabin was on the deck. It was considered a first-class cabin and the best cabin on the God of Lu. At the staircase, a guard immediately stopped Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan. However, after Zhuowen took out the 2 tickets, the guard allowed the 2 of them to board the ship. Brother Zhuo, looking at Blue Ghost, that young Master Warrelis should have a great background. How do you plan to save Miss Yoon and the rest? Ren Yonggan quietly asked through voice transmission. Barge in. Zhuowen spat out a sentence that almost made Ren Yonggan vomit blood. This Zhuowen was too bold. He actually dared to be so unscrupulous on the God of Lu. If they barged in, they would definitely break the rules of the God of Lu. At that time, the 5 of them would very likely be abandoned by the God of Lu. Zhuowen also saw Ren Yong'an's hesitation and said, "If Brother Ren feels that it's inappropriate, you can choose not to follow me. At this moment, I just want to feel better. Others have already bullied you. If you are a coward, it will only make them worse. Only by displaying your strength and biting back at them will they remember that you are not someone to be trifled with. Next time, they will not mess with you." Chapter 2069. Barging in with the ticket, Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan naturally had the right to enter the deck of the God of Lu. Therefore, Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan were able to ascend to the deck of the God of Lu without any obstructions. The deck was enveloped in a powerful restrictive array. Through the almost transparent array, one could see the vast starry sky outside the array. Zhuowen silently glanced at the scene on the deck, then withdrew his gaze and walked towards the cabin where young Master Warrelis was. "Haha, young Master Warrelis, it looks like you've gained a lot this time. Did you bring back any good news after returning from the starfield?" Suddenly, a rough and unruly voice came from outside the deck, attracting Zhuowen's attention. Raising his head, he saw many cultivators standing in front of the railing at the edge of the deck. Among these cultivators, there were 2 people who were the focus of everyone's attention. One of them was a young man with a sickly pale complexion dressed in a light yellow brocade robe. A long sword hung from his waist, and the surface of the scabbard was inlaid with countless sparkling crystals. It was very dazzling. The other person was dressed in a black robe. He was 9 feet tall and as sturdy as a tiger. His skin was dark, and his bearing was extraordinary. The rough and unruly voice just now had come from this black-robed young man. Zhuowen knew that the pale-faced young man should be the young Master Warrelis he was looking for. However, he did not immediately go up. Since this young Master Warrelis was on the deck, Yun Chuyu and the other two should have been brought back to the cabin by this young Master Warrelis' subordinates. He gave Ren Yonggan a look, and the two of them entered the deck as if nothing had happened. They blended into the crowd on the deck, and no one noticed anything unusual. Zhuowen quietly walked into the crowd surrounding young Master Warrelis and heard young Master Warrelis' voice. "Hehe, a very interesting rogue cultivator has appeared in the starfield this time. It is said that this rogue cultivator has played 8 of the 10 great sects' sect masters in the starfield." "Oh, a mere loose cultivator can play the 8 sect leaders in circles? Young Master Warrelis, are you making things up?" the black-robed young man said in disbelief. Young Master Warrelis smiled and said, "That's because that loose cultivator has a treasure like the heavenly starry sky essence. Do you think anyone from the 10 great sects can remain calm?" As soon as he said this, the crowd went into an uproar. Heavenly starry sky essence was obviously very attractive to them. The black-robed youth also revealed a strange expression and looked at young Master Warrelis, wanting him to continue. Warrelis didn't keep them in the starfield in the starfield, he told them all of the starfield's grand interstellar. Haha. This independent cultivator called Zhuowen is a talent. His strength isn't bad, and his boldness isn't small either. If he's nurtured properly, he'll absolutely become a terrifying and ambitious figure in the future. The black-robed young man laughed loudly. "And, too. Speaking of which, I also want to meet Zhuowen. Unfortunately, my luck is too bad." "Speaking of..." young Master Warrelis sighed. Zhuowen sneered. He glanced at Ren Yonggan and said, "Brother Ren, you stay here and keep an eye on young Master Warrelis. I'm going to check this guy's cabin." After getting Ren Yonggan's affirmative answer, Zhuowen quietly left the deck. Young Master Warrelis' cabin was heaven number 10. Zhuowen learned this from Blue Ghost's divine soul memory. Every cabin on the Divine Lu ship was set up with powerful restrictive spells to prevent other cultivators from breaking into the cabin and stealing. Without the key, once the restriction was triggered, it would immediately trigger the alarm. At that time, everyone on the ship would know. Standing in front of heaven number 10, Zhuowen's powerful divine sense spread out. After confirming that there was no one around, his eyes fell on the door of heaven number 10. At the same time, more than 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space operated at the same time. His powerful divine sense entered the door without making a sound. Fortunately, Zhuowen's level of array Dao was extremely high. While he used his divine sense to explore the door, he also used the all-devouring restriction to hide his aura. This was to prevent the restriction inside the door from detecting his aura and triggering the alarm. After about 2 hours, Zhuowen's divine sense finally completely invaded the door. Then, his divine sense turned into a large hand and opened the restriction from inside the door. Quietly opening the door of heaven number 10, Zhuowen sneaked in. Then, he frowned and found that the door was filled with the charming smell of rouge and powder. At the same time, a pink mist floated in the room. With a light sniff, Zhuowen actually felt a slight heat in his lower abdomen. He knew that this thing was probably an aphrodisiac or something similar. Holding his breath, Zhuowen's sharp eyes fell on the corner of the room. There were 3 beautiful figures tied up there. Zhuowen did not need to think to know that they were definitely Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan. Just as Zhuowen was about to undo the bindings on the 3 women, Ren Yonggan sent him a message. "Young Master Warrelis has returned to the cabin. Be careful." Zhuowen frowned slightly and hurriedly resealed the restriction in front of the door. Then, he dove into the wardrobe at the side and circulated the all-devouring formless, completely restraining his aura. The moment Zhuowen hid in the wardrobe, the door of heaven number 10 was opened. The pale-faced young Master Warrelis slowly walked in. His eyes carried a lustful light as he looked at the 3 beauties tied up in the corner of the room. Moreover, their 5 senses had been blocked. 3 beauties, this young master will immediately undo the shielding on your 5 senses. Young Master Warrelis grinned and came to the 3 women's side. He quickly tapped them, and the three women immediately spoke in clear voices. "Who are you? Why have you kidnapped us here?" Yin Bingyun was the calmest. She coldly looked at young Master Warrelis and asked. Young Master Warrelis carefully examined Yin Bingyun's peerless beauty. Yin Bingyun's beauty was not inferior to Yun Chuyu's. Moreover, Yin Bingyun had a more mature charm than Yun Chuyu, so to men, Yin Bingyun was more alluring than Yun Chuyu. Young Master Warrelis gently lifted Yin Bingyun's delicate chin and clicked his tongue in wonder. "What a seductive little vixen. You're so alluring even when you're angry. This young master can't bear to part with you." Yin Bingyun wanted to struggle, but it was a pity that young Master Warrelis was stronger than her. Moreover, her cultivation had been sealed, so she could not break free from the hand that she loathed. Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan also glared at him. Although they did not know what young Master Warrelis was trying to do, it was obvious that he was up to no good. Young Master Warrelis stood up and silently sized up the three women in front of him. In the end, he pulled Hong Shan out and said with a smile, "Little beauty, let's start with you. If we play with the best from the start, we might end up with a fly in the ointment." As he spoke, young Master Warrelis let out a lewd laugh. His hand unceremoniously reached into Hong Shan's lapel. Hong Shan's beautiful eyes were filled with shame and anger. Just as young Master Warrelis was about to succeed, a purple light suddenly shot out. It was extremely fast and pierced towards young Master Warrelis' back. Young Master Warrelis' right hand suddenly exerted force and forcefully pulled Hong Shan to his chest. He abruptly turned around and used Hong Shan as a shield. The purple light was extremely fast, but when it realized that young Master Warrelis was using Hong Shan as a shield, it immediately changed direction and landed beside Hong Shan's feet. Bang bang bang! Instantly, the ground beside young Master Warrelis' feet shattered and cracked. The purple light exploded and looked extremely strange. Young Master Warrelis grabbed onto Hong Shan and hastily retreated to the corner of the room. He coldly stared at the youth who suddenly appeared in the room and said, "Who exactly are you?" Zhuowen looked at young Master Warrelis in astonishment. His timing was very accurate, but this young Master Warrelis still managed to dodge his sneak attack. It was obvious that young Master Warrelis had discovered him in advance. However, his previous series of actions were merely a show in front of him. "How did you see through it?" Zhuowen put away his purple sword and asked indifferently. Young Master Warrelis sneered and said, "This room is filled with this red mist. It is an aphrodisiac that this young master personally concocted. This young master has left his divine sense imprint in it. The moment someone enters this young master's room, this young master will immediately know. Speaking of which, this young master really admires you. You didn't even need a key and you were actually able to enter this room. It seems like your array Dao standard is pretty good." Zhuowen neither agreed nor disagreed. He slowly walked towards young Master Warrelis and said indifferently, "Now, you only have one choice, and that is to immediately release these three women. Only then will you have a chance to live." Young Master Warrelis narrowed his eyes and laughed loudly, saying, "Are you crazy? Who exactly is strong and who is weak now? Don't tell me you can't tell." After young Master Warrelis finished speaking, three figures with powerful auras rushed in from outside heaven number 10. These three people's divine senses were firmly locked onto Zhuowen. As long as Zhuowen dared to move, these three people would definitely attack without mercy. Zhuowen glanced at the three people indifferently. These three cultivators weren't weak. Two of them had a cultivation of 2 steps in the Void Sky Realm, while the other old man had a cultivation of 3 steps in the Void Sky Realm. This kind of lineup was enough to capture a 3-step Void Sky expert. Zhuowen's aura was only 1 step in the Void Sky Realm, so it was no wonder that young Master Warrelis was so confident. "Now, do you still dare to say those big words from before?" Young Master Warrelis looked at the youth in front of him with ridicule and said. Zhuowen nodded. He still looked at young Master Warrelis indifferently and said, "I said, you only have one choice, and that is to immediately release these three women. Otherwise, you will die without a doubt." The ridicule on young Master Warrelis' face disappeared. He licked his lips and said coldly, "It seems like you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You guys go and kill this brat. This young master will reward you handsomely. Boom. Chapter 2070. The Sinister Human Heart. Bang. 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 In an instant, Zhuowen was engaged in a fierce battle with the three cultivators. It was unknown if it was intentional, but after young Master Warrelis ordered the three cultivators to enter, he closed the door again, as if he didn't want the other cultivators on the divine continent to know. Young Master Wu Yu's mouth was filled with a sneer as he looked at Zhuowen, who was retreating step by step under the joint attack of the three cultivators. Your strength is not bad, to actually be able to resist the joint attack of the three of them. However, how long can you last? Before young Master Warrelis could finish his words, the cabinet beside him suddenly shattered, and a black shadow rushed out, heading straight for the complacent young Master Warrelis. Bang! The black shadow was too fast, and before young Master Warrelis could react, he was sent flying and smashed into the wall. Young Master Warrelis roared, and the jade pendant on his waist emitted a terrifying light, forming a thick wall of light in front of him. The black shadow was silent, and with a step, it arrived in front of young Master Warrelis. His right hand grabbed at the air, and terrifying pitch-black lightning condensed into a pitch-black long sword in his palm. Bang! 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 The pitch-black long sword slashed out hundreds of times in an instant, and the light wall on the surface of young Master Warrelis shattered. Young Master Warrelis spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. The black shadow stretched out his right hand, and the black lightning extended out like a chain, instantly binding young Master Warrelis' neck and lifting him up. Young Master Warrelis wanted to resist, but unfortunately, the black shadow was much stronger than him, and no matter how he struggled, it was useless. The three cultivators who were fighting Zhuowen immediately noticed the abnormality on young Master Warrelis' side, and they were startled, turning their heads to look. The eyes of Zhuowen, who'd been suppressed since the beginning, emitted a dazzling bright light. He flicked his sleeve and withdrew 48 golden devil swords. They crisscrossed through the air and formed layers of overlapping vortexes of killing intent that swept towards the three people who were in a daze. The three of them didn't expect Zhuowen to suddenly exert his strength, and their attention was completely attracted by young Master Warrelis. For a moment, they didn't react, and were directly hit by the killing intent vortexes. Poochie. Two of the cultivators who reached the second step of the illusory sky instantly exploded into clouds of blood mist. Even the illusory sky bridge was shattered into pieces. They were deader than dead. The other cultivator was seriously injured. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and smashed into the wall. His expression was dispirited and he continued to twitch. Young Master Warrelis was scared silly. Looking at the young man who had defeated his three personal guards in an instant, his heart was filled with fear. With young Master Wu Yu's intelligence, how could he not know that Zhuowen had intentionally concealed his strength in order to numb them? As for the unfamiliar cultivator shrouded in demonic mist, he was definitely an accomplice of the young man in front of him. He had actually not noticed this before. This time, he had really miscalculated. Zhuowen came to the side of the wall and stabbed the glorious amethyst galaxy sword into the cultivator's forehead, destroying his soul. At the same time, sharp sword chi circulated around the cultivator's body, destroying the illusory heavenly bridge in his body. I said before that you only had one choice. Unfortunately, you made the wrong choice. Then, don't blame me for being impolite. Zhuowen arrived in front of young noble Warrelis and nodded to the black-robed Zhuowen. Zhuowen clenched his right hand, and an extreme lightning sword pierced through young noble Warrelis' body. The terrifying extreme lightning energy spread throughout young noble Warrelis' body, instantly turning him into dust. After dealing with the corpses in the room, Zhuowen released the shackles on Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and the three women. Zhuowen, I owe you another life, Yin Bingyun said with a slightly ashamed expression. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, if I hadn't been purposely sent away by Captain Liu, you wouldn't have been captured. The responsibility is mine. Although Yin Bingyun and the other two still wanted to say something, they were stopped by Zhuowen. Zhuowen said, from now on, we'll cultivate in this cabin. Also, I'll call Brother Ren over later. For the time being, no one knew about young Master Wu Yu's death. Moreover, this heaven number 10 cabin was extremely large. There were 4 to 5 bedrooms inside, enough to accommodate 5 people. Moreover, the red mist that young Master Wu Yu had arranged in the room had been completely devoured by Zhuowen with his devouring power. The 3 women who were originally under the influence of the aphrodisiac had used their divine power to completely expel it. Not long after, Ren Yonggan, who had been notified by Zhuowen, quietly arrived at the door of heaven number 10. He appeared extremely nervous and cautious. When the door opened, Ren Yonggan jumped in fright. Seeing that it was Zhuowen, he hurriedly went into the cabin. "Brother Zhuo, did you get rid of young Master Wu Yu and the others?" Ren Yonggan asked with trepidation. Zhuowen nodded and said with a smile, "From now on, we'll cultivate in young Master Wu Yu's cabin until we reach the myriad magnet sea." "But, Brother Zhuo, didn't you buy 5 tickets? Aren't you going to use them?" Ren Yonggan asked in astonishment. However, Zhuowen sneered and said, "Brother Ren, do you really think that Captain Liu is kind? It's not a coincidence that Captain Liu called me out. It's deliberate." Ren Yong'an's pupils shrank. He said in a deep voice, "Brother Zhuo, you mean, won't we know what Captain Liu's intentions are once we go to that cabin?" Zhuowen sneered. The God Liu cabin was divided into 4 levels, namely heaven, earth, black, and yellow. The heaven cabin was the highest level and was located on the deck of the God Liu cabin. The yellow cabin was the lowest level and was located on the lowest level. It was only 1 level higher than the pile of junk that Zhuowen was in. At this moment, Captain Liu, who was dressed in black armor, was leading a group of soldiers to the front of the yellow cabin. Finally, they arrived at the 5th cabin, which was the most secluded cabin. "Open these 5 cabins and kill everyone in them," Captain Liu said with a cold look in his eyes. "Yes." The group of soldiers shouted in unison. Soon after, they opened the 5 cabin doors one after another. Without even looking inside, they bombarded the inside with divine abilities and divine artifacts without any warning. After a while, when there was no movement inside, the soldiers divided into 5 squads and entered the 5 cabins with extreme vigilance. Not long after, the 5 squads came out again and reported, "Captain, there's no one in the 5 cabins." Captain Liu narrowed his eyes and revealed a look of astonishment. He knew that 3 of the female cultivators in Zhuowen's group were taken away by young Master Wu Yu's men. After Zhuowen got the tickets, even if he found out that the 3 female cultivators were captured by young Master Wu Yu, after hearing of young Master Wu Yu's reputation, he shouldn't act rashly. Instead, he should return to the cabin to cultivate in seclusion. However, there was not a single person in the 5 cabins. This naturally caused Captain Liu to be exceptionally surprised. The reason why he wanted to kill Zhuowen was naturally because of the fire spirit sap on Zhuowen's body. Since Zhuowen could take out several bottles of fire spirit sap without a frown, it meant that he had a lot of fire spirit sap on him. Now that Captain Liu was at the juncture of a breakthrough, how could the few bottles of fire spirit sap that Zhuowen gave him be enough? Therefore, he planned to silence him and take all of Zhuowen's fire spirit sap for himself. Not far from the isle, there was a shadow. Zhuowen and Ren Yonggan silently watched everything. "That bastard is trying to kill us all. This time, it's all thanks to Brother Zhuo. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know how we died." Ren Yonggan cursed in a low voice with lingering fear. Zhuowen's gaze was extremely cold. He said to Ren Yonggan, "Brother Ren, you go back to the cabin first." "What about you?" Ren Yonggan looked at Zhuowen in surprise. "I'll go back later. You go back first," Zhuowen said with a smile. Ren Yonggan nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He quietly left. At this moment, Captain Liu frowned. The soldiers around him were waiting for his orders. "Clean up these 5 cabins and monitor them at all times. If someone enters these cabins with a ticket, inform me immediately. Do you understand?" Captain Liu ordered the soldiers around him again and left the place. He walked straight in the direction of Zhuowen. Zhuowen secretly lay dormant. His huge divine sense covered the surface of his body. At the same time, he operated all life formless to the extreme. Captain Liu didn't notice that Zhuowen was hiding in the dark at all. He walked over as if nothing had happened. The moment Captain Liu walked to the dark place where Zhuowen was, Zhuowen immediately activated the soul-absorbing divine needle. At the same time, he detonated the 100 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space, boosting his divine sense to an extremely terrifying level. The soul-absorbing divine needle turned into a blazing golden light. With a whoosh, it entered the depths of Captain Liu's forehead. Then, a powerful and terrifying strangling force completely destroyed Captain Liu's divine soul. Zhuowen's huge divine sense turned into an invisible hand that entered Captain Liu's body and crushed his illusory heavenly bridge. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The soldiers behind only saw Captain Liu suddenly fall to the ground when he walked to the dark place. After killing Captain Liu, Zhuowen quietly left the place. If Captain Liu hadn't been so ruthless, Zhuowen might not have killed him. Unfortunately, Captain Liu was too greedy. First, he sent Zhuowen away and let young Master Warrelis kidnap Yun Chuyu and the other 2 girls. Now, he coveted more of the fire spirit juice on him and wanted to take his life. In that case, he couldn't blame Zhuowen for being merciless. What happened to Captain Liu? The soldiers at the back felt that something was wrong. They rushed forward and stopped beside Captain Liu. Then, their expressions changed drastically. They found that Captain Liu's aura was completely gone. It was as if he was dead. Captain Liu is dead. What should we do? The soldiers began to panic. Report to the captain immediately. Captain Liu is the captain's younger brother. This time, Captain Liu is dead. I'm afraid the captain. Thinking of the infamous captain, the surrounding soldiers couldn't help but shiver. However, they didn't dare to not report it. If they hid the truth, they would die very miserably. Chapter 2071. Second ascension of the illusory Skywat was different from the situation outside the cabin, was that the cabin of Heaven number 10 was as calm as water. In the room, Zhuowen casually set up a thick seal wall at the door. Then, he sized up the spoils of war that he had plundered. Zhuowen moved most of the resources into Devour's inner world. He was going to use the resources to assist the cultivators of Heavenly Armor Star and Ziwei Galaxy in their cultivation. At the same time, he moved the Scarlet Cloud Celestial Soil Herb Field that he had dug out from Netherworld Hall to Heavenly Armor Star. The divine herbs in it were almost inexhaustible. It would bring unimaginable benefits to the cultivators of Heavenly Armor Star. After dealing with the Scarlet Cloud Celestial Soil Herb Field and other resources, Zhuowen carefully took out the Ice Lotus that he had obtained from the 3rd level of Netherworld Hall. Zhuowen was sure that there was something unusual about the Ice Lotus that Yu Wuxi had carefully preserved on the 3rd level of Netherworld Hall. The surface of the Ice Lotus was still covered with the Thunder Fire Sword's lightning and fire energy. However, the Ice Lotus gave off a cold air that was too thick and terrifying. The lightning and fire energy gradually weakened and even showed signs of being frozen. Zhuowen creased his eyebrows. Back then, he had come into contact with the Ice Lotus. Hence, he knew how terrifying the cold air that the Ice Lotus gave off was. Once the lightning and fire energy was broken by the Ice Lotus, the terrifying cold air would definitely freeze the entire cabin. The Thunder Fire Sword floated next to Zhuowen. Xiao Hei sat cross-legged on the sword's hilt and said lazily, "If you want to restrain the Ice Lotus, I'm afraid you'll need a powerful extreme fire energy. This thing is quite beneficial for you to pass through the fire." Extreme fire energy. Zhuowen's eyes twinkled and he immediately thought of Yin Bingyun. Yin Bingyun had passed through the 19th fire and was only one step away from becoming real god extreme fire. The extreme fire energy in Yin Bingyun's body should be able to restrain the terrifying cold air of the Ice Lotus. With that thought, Zhuowen invited Yin Bingyun over. When Yin Bingyun saw the Ice Lotus floating in Zhuowen's room, her beautiful eyes narrowed as she naturally felt the terrifying cold air of the Ice Lotus. However, Yin Bingyun was smart. She didn't ask much but followed Zhuowen's instructions. She poured all her extreme fire energy into the Ice Lotus and merged it with the lightning and fire energy within the Ice Lotus. The thunder fire energy, which had been gradually extinguishing, gradually expanded and finally completely suppressed the cold energy of the Ice Lotus. Sect Master Yin Bingyun. Zhuo and Yang as he cupped his hands Yin, and cupped his hands. Yin Bingyun 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 Yun Yang, Yang. Is Yun 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 Yu. Yu Yun 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 is Dragon Yang Studio. Is Yun. Studio Yang Studio Yun 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 Yang Shen Yun Studio Studio. Studio Yang Studio. I won't disturb you any longer. Yin Bingyun smiled and left Zhuo Wen's room. After Yin Bingyun left, Zhuo and Yang Studio sat cross-legged in his room and prepared to cultivate. Since Dark Fantasy Sect had taken so many resources from him, it would be a waste if he didn't use them for cultivation. 1 month later, Zhuo and Yang Studio opened his eyes and there was a huge illusory heavenly bridge behind him. The illusory heavenly bridge was overflowing with purple light. There were a total of 9 steps. The first step was bright while the other 8 steps were dim. Phew, let's try to step onto the second step. Zhuo and Yang Studio fixed his gaze on the dim second step. He knew that once he stepped onto the second step, the dim step would shine with dazzling light. His realm would also advance to the illusory heavenly second step smoothly. However, each step on the illusory heavenly bridge was harder than the previous one. The pressure was also scarier than the previous one. Although Zhuo and Yang Studio had consumed all the resources he had taken from Dark Fantasy Sect in the past month, he still didn't have enough confidence to completely step onto the second step. However, he could give it a try. Thinking of this, Zhuo and Yang Studio landed on the illusory heavenly bridge. Then, he stomped his right foot and stepped onto the second step. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion resounded from the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge. Subsequently, an earth-shattering pressure pressed down on Zhuo Wen. Zhuo and Yang Studio snorted coldly and stood firm against the terrifying pressure. At the same time, the more than 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space began to operate at full speed. To Zhuo and Yang Studio's surprise, he stepped onto the second step without any pressure. Whoosh! Suddenly, the dim step lit up rapidly. The surface of the illusory heavenly bridge became more solid and its aura became more vast. Zhuo and Yang Studio's essence, qi, and spirit were raised to another level. Zhuo and Yang Studio knew that he had completely advanced to the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge. His strength had increased by more than a few times. I wonder if I can also step onto the third step of the illusory heavenly bridge. Zhuo Wen looked at the dim third step with a burning gaze. After thinking for a long time, he finally took a step forward and directly stepped onto the third step. Rumble. Suddenly, a muffled thunderous sound exploded in Zhuo and Yang Studio's ears. Then, a pressure like the might of the heavens surged over like a tide. Zhuo and Yang Studio was caught off guard and was hit head-on. With a muffled groan, he fell off the illusory heavenly bridge. After stabilizing his body, Zhuo and Yang Studio smiled bitterly. It seems that I was too greedy. Advancing to the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge is already the limit. How can I advance to the third step of the illusory heavenly bridge in a row? Suddenly, Zhuo and Yang Studio's gaze changed slightly. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge, walked out of the room, and came to the door. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others heard the noise and walked out one after another. They looked at each other, and the atmosphere became heavy. Who is it? Zhuo and Yang Studio asked coldly. Brother Wu Yu, it's me. Fang Zhen, open the door. Let's go to the deck and take a stroll. I don't know what's wrong with the captain of the Divine Continent these days, but he's suddenly put up such heavy security and forbade the passengers from casually coming out. A rough voice came from outside the door. Zhuo and Yang Studio recognized this voice. Wasn't it the black-robed young man who was talking loudly with young Master Wu Yu on the deck? At that time, from the way young Master Wu Yu and the black-robed young man stood, the black-robed young man's background was probably not inferior to young Master Wu Yu's. All right, I'll open the door for you right away, Zhuo and Yang Studio said, then indicated for Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others to hide. Afterward, he took out the mask god tool he obtained from the Hongyun Trading Company and put it on his face. Then, He used all life formless to change his appearance to young Master Wu Yu's. After opening the door, the black-robed young man sized up Zhuo and Yang's studio, then looked inside the cabin and said, "You took so long to open the door. Are you hiding a mistress inside? Do you want me to catch her for you?" Zhuo and Yang's studio frowned slightly. He knew that he must have aroused the black-robed young man's suspicion. "Hihi, you also know my nature. You were right when you said that I was keeping a mistress in a golden house." Zhuo and Yang's studio smiled, then transmitted his voice to Yin Bingyun and the others, telling them to come out. At this moment, Zhuo and Yang's studio was calmer than anyone else. If the black-robed young man before him was really suspicious and wanted to check the cabin, Zhuo and Yang's studio had no way to stop him. He could only use this method to evade him. After all, on this God Lu, the cultivators who knew Yun Chuyu and the others were basically all dead, so he was not afraid of being recognized. Of course, even if they recognized him, Zhuo and Yang's studio was not afraid. These three women were originally kidnapped by young Master Wu Yu's men. Now that they appeared by young Master Wu Yu's side, wasn't it very normal? TSK. Sure enough, young Master Wu Yu knows how to enjoy life. You've hidden three beauties all of a sudden. It's really not simple. The black-robed young man, Fang Zhen, gave him a thumbs up and laughed. Let's go. Let's go to the deck and take a look. Also, what do you think happened to the God Lu recently? Could it be that something happened? Zhuo and Yang's studio closed the cabin door, then walked to the deck side by side with Fang Zhen. Fang Zhen said with a gloomy expression, "I heard that the captain's younger brother died, so the captain is now turning the entire God Lu upside down to find the murderer. However, the results are minimal. Moreover, the captain is even crazier. He actually broke into every cabin and searched carefully in order to find the murderer who killed his younger brother." Zhuo and Yang's studio silently followed behind Fang Zhen, but his heart was filled with astonishment. He knew that Captain Liu, who he had killed, should be the captain's younger brother that Fang Zhen was talking about. He did not expect that Captain Liu's position was not high, but his background was so great. What Zhuo and Yang's studio did not know was that Captain Liu's previous position was extremely high, above many of the cultivators on the God Lu. However, Captain Liu had angered everyone and was impeached by many cultivators on the God Lu. Under the pressure, the captain could only demote Captain Liu's position to captain. After the matter died down, he would promote Captain Liu again. However, now that Captain Liu had been killed by Zhuo and Yang's studio, the captain was completely enraged. Even if he had to pay a huge price, the captain swore that he would find the culprit. "Since the captain is searching the cabin, why isn't there any movement from my heaven number 10? Zhuoan asked in surprise. Fang Zhen smiled and said, "The cultivators who are able to stay in the sky cabin are all people of high status. The captain doesn't dare to search the sky cabin at will. Otherwise, he would offend too many people, and it wouldn't be good for him." Hearing this, Zhuowen's heart relaxed slightly. What he was most afraid of was that the captain would search heaven number 10. Once they searched, Ren Yonggan would definitely be exposed. At that time, he would also become the target of public criticism. This was not the result he wanted. Now, he only wanted to safely ride the God Lu to the myriad magnetic sea. The two of them arrived at the deck. At this moment, there were quite a number of cultivators gathered on the deck. The numerous cultivators that came forward all greeted Zhuoan and Fang Zhen warmly. Zhuo and Yang's studio naturally knew that these people were not greeting him, but the young master Zhuoan that he was impersonating. Standing on the deck and looking at the vast starry sky outside, Zhuoan and Fang Zhen quietly chatted. Chapter 2072. Doubt from Fang Zhen. Zhuoan knew that the carefree palace behind young Master Warrelis was a slightly famous force in the myriad magnet sea. It had many experts and abundant resources. As for Fang Zhen, he was the young master of a force called the Xiantian Valley. His father was the master of the Xiantian Valley and possessed monstrous authority. He was in the limelight in the Xiantian Valley. Fang Zhen and young Master Warrelis were birds of a feather. Although they hadn't known each other for long on the God Lu, their relationship wasn't bad. It just so happened that the Carefree Palace and the Xiantian Valley were on par. The two of them quickly became good friends and often hung out together. Zhuoan also found out from Fang Zhen that the captain of the god Lu was called Liu Wuqi. He was an itinerant cultivator, but his talent was extraordinarily high and he had many fortuitous encounters. His cultivation had reached the 6th level void sky. After struggling in the myriad magnet sea for thousands of years, he finally established his own flying ship and force. His reputation in the myriad magnet sea wasn't small. There were many flying ship forces in the myriad magnet sea, but this god Lu was sufficient to be ranked in the top 20 among the numerous flying ships in the myriad magnet sea. It could be seen that this Liu Wuqi was extraordinary. Zhuoan wasn't afraid of the 6th level void sky. Even if Liu Wuqi discovered that it was he, Zhuoan, who killed his younger brother, Zhuoan wouldn't panic in the slightest. But the purpose of Zhuoan's trip this time wasn't to kill, but to head to the myriad magnet sea and enter the waning phases. He naturally didn't want any unforeseen events to occur on the god Lu. In this unfamiliar land of the far west, Zhuoan could only rely on the god Lu to reach the myriad magnet sea. Otherwise, it would be difficult to move an inch. Thump, thump. All of a sudden, hurried footsteps sounded like steel hitting the ground, resounding throughout the entire deck. Subsequently, at the end of the deck, a group of over 20 black-armored soldiers walked over quickly, causing many cultivators on the deck to frown. The deck was within the scope of the heaven cabin, and the soldiers of the god Lu rarely came up with such great fanfare. After all, most of the people in the heaven cabin were existences with powerful backgrounds. Liu Wuqi never dared to act rashly. But now, this group of soldiers had come in so brazenly. It would be strange if the other cultivators were comfortable. The leader of the group was clad in black scale armor. He led the soldiers towards young Master Warrelis and Fang Zhen. Fang Zhen, who was originally conversing with young Master Warrelis, frowned slightly. He stared coldly at the soldiers and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" The leader bowed politely and said, "This lowly one, Guiyang, greets the two sirs. I'm very sorry to disturb the two sirs this time, but this lowly one is under Captain Liu's orders to take these 3 women away. I hope that young Master Warrelis can give Captain Liu some face." After saying that, the leader turned his head and bowed deeply to Zhuoan. His expression was full of respect, and he did not dare to show any neglect. On the other hand, Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Hong Shan, who were standing behind Zhuoan, had pale faces. So that's how it is. In any case, they are used shoes that Brother Warrelis is tired of playing with. Naturally, giving them to Captain Liu is no problem, Fang Zhen said indifferently. Fang Zhen knew young Master Warrelis' nature. Although he was lustful, he was extremely cold, especially towards the women he had played with. He would either use his domineering dual cultivation method to suck their blood essence and cultivation dry, play them to death, or give them away casually. It could be said that in young Master Warrelis' eyes, women were like livestock. They were completely useless. If he could throw them away, he would throw them away. If he could kill them, he would kill them. Therefore, Fang Zhen did not mind and treated it as giving Liu Wuqi some face. The leader's eyes were filled with joy. Just as he was about to express his gratitude, a terrifying palm wind suddenly whistled over and heavily slammed into his chest. Poochie. The leader suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and bloodless as he heavily smashed into the ground. He was on his last breath. "You actually dared to ask for the women that this young master has taken a fancy to in front of me. Are you looking down on this young master?" Zhuoan looked down at the leader and said indifferently. The originally clamorous deck instantly became extremely silent. Many cultivators looked at young Master Warrelis while discussing animatedly. Obviously, they did not expect that young Master Warrelis would suddenly make a move and heavily injure the leader. This was obviously not giving Liu Wuqi any face. Fang Zhen opened his mouth but did not speak. He frowned slightly. Just now, when Zhuoan made a move, he noticed that the latter's aura was actually much stronger than his. Zhuoan had probably already attained the 2nd step of the illusory sky realm. But Fang Zhen remembered that young Master Warrelis' cultivation was not high a month ago. He had merely condensed the illusory sky bridge not long ago. It had only been a month since they last met, yet young Master Warrelis had already attained the second step of the illusory sky bridge. His speed of advancement was really too fast. After the leader was defeated, the soldiers behind him drew their weapons and looked coldly at Zhuowen. What? You still want to make a move against this young master? Your divine continent is really something. Are you relying on this young master's presence on your flying ship to silence me? Zhuowen said fearlessly. Since young Master Warrelis' identity was not ordinary, he naturally would not make good use of it. Stop. Let's go. The leader struggled to get up and shouted at the surrounding soldiers. Shortly after, he knelt on one knee and said while panting, Young Master Warrelis, this lowly one was rude just now. I hope that young Master Warrelis will not take offense. Scram. If this young master fancies a woman, I would rather kill and throw her away than give her to you. If you want this young master to give her away, then what is this young master? Am I a subordinate of your divine continent? Zhuowen said indifferently. Once these words came out, the surrounding cultivators all nodded. Zhuowen's words were in line with Zhuowen's current identity as young Master Warrelis. Young Master Warrelis' identity was honorable, and the Warrelis palace behind him was not small. Although the palace lord was also a cultivator at the sixth step of the illusory sky bridge, his strength was only stronger than Liu Wuqi's. Moreover, the divine continent only had Liu Wuqi, a sixth-step illusory sky bridge expert, while the Warrelis palace had 4 such experts. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. After the leader left, Fang Zhen carefully sized up Zhuowen in front of him and said with a smile, Warrelis, you brat, you hid it from me for quite a long time. I originally thought that your cultivation was about the same as mine, but I didn't expect you to hide it so deeply. Your cultivation reached the second step of the illusory sky bridge so quickly. You really make me envious. Zhuowen smiled and said, Brother Fang, you've misunderstood. You should know that I'm cultivating a dual cultivation technique. This cultivation technique is different from yours. It requires dual cultivation in order to rapidly increase my cultivation. As he said that, Zhuowen pointed at Yin Bingyun and the other 2 behind him and said with a lewd smile, These 3 are of the highest quality. In this 1 month, it was because of these 3 that my dual cultivation reached the large success stage. Why do you think my cultivation increased so quickly? Fang Zhen looked at Yin Bingyun and the other 2 in surprise. He believed Zhuowen's words a little. Fang Zhen naturally knew that young Master Warrelis cultivated a dual cultivation technique. However, he didn't expect that his cultivation would increase so quickly after encountering a top-quality cultivation furnace. On the other hand, Yin Bingyun and the other 2's faces were flushed red, even to their ears. They cursed Zhuowen's shamelessness in their hearts. After hearing Zhuowen's words, the doubts in Fang Zhen's heart were immediately dispelled. He laughed heartily and said, as expected of Warrelis, I really envy you for being able to find such top-quality cultivation furnaces. As he said that, Fang Zhen's eyes revealed a look of envy. When he heard that the 3 of them were of the highest quality, he originally wanted to ask Zhuowen for 1 or 2 to play with. However, when he thought of the fate of the captain of the divine continent, he gave up on that idea. Zhuowen chatted with Fang Zhen for a while more before bidding farewell and returning to the cabin. On the other hand, Fang Zhen gave Zhuowen an ambiguous expression and didn't ask Zhuowen to stay. Zhuowen led the 3 women through the crowd. At the entrance, he stopped because someone was blocking his path. It was a middle-aged man with a scar on his right eye. His body was filled with a soul-shaking ferocious aura, like a trapped beast that had just been released from its cage. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and coldly stared at this person. Judging from this person's aura, he knew that this person was an expert at the 6th step of the Void Sky Realm. On the Divine Continent, there weren't many people with a cultivation base at the 6th step of the Void Sky Realm. Who else could it be but the captain of the Divine Continent, Liu Wuqi? What's the matter? Zhuowen asked indifferently. Liu Wuqi didn't say anything. He only glanced at Zhuowen before looking coldly at the 3 women behind Zhuowen. He grinned and said, It's nothing. This king just has some questions to ask the three women behind young master. I wonder if young master will give me face. At this moment, the deck was completely silent. Many cultivators were quietly watching this scene. Even Fang Zhen looked over, but he didn't walk over. He wanted to see how Zhuowen would deal with Liu Wuqi. Although Fang Zhen knew that young Master Carefree had brought experts with him, he didn't think that Carefree Palace would send out their strongest experts. At most, they would send some experts at the third step of the Void Sky Realm. However, such experts weren't worth mentioning in front of Liu Wuqi. They were like ants. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "These three are this young master's women. Can Captain Liu give me face and not ask any questions?" Liu Wuqi's expression stiffened and his eyes turned cold. Everyone on the deck was in an uproar as they discussed animatedly. No one expected that young Master Carefree wouldn't give Liu Wuqi any face when he personally came out. This was too much of a character. Then what if I insist? Liu Wuqi suddenly laughed. Soon after, a terrifying aura erupted like a vast mountain, completely suppressing Zhuowen's body. Yun Chuyu and the other two women's expressions changed drastically. They couldn't withstand this terrifying pressure. Their bodies trembled, and they almost knelt on the ground. However, this pressure left as quickly as it came. A terrifying divine sense swept out from between Zhuowen's brows and turned into a thick barrier around him, firmly blocking this terrifying pressure. What? Does Captain Liu want to use force? It looks like you don't put the Carefree Palace behind this young master in your eyes at all. Zhuowen sneered. Liu Wuqi frowned slightly. Seeing that Zhuowen wasn't affected in the slightest, he withdrew his pressure. Chapter 2073. Myriad Magnet C. Young Master Warrelis, I don't intend to do anything to your women. I just want to ask you a few questions, Liu Wuqi said calmly. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he replied indifferently, if you want to ask questions, you should have said so earlier. Previously, you even sent someone over to take away my women so arrogantly. Do you really think that you can take away my belongings just like that? Liu Wuqi nodded and clapped his hands. A cultivator who was tied up was thrown at Liu Wuqi's feet. Zhuowen looked over. Wasn't that the cultivator in black armor who wanted to take the women away from him earlier on? However, at this moment, the black-armored cultivator's eyes were filled with terror. He quickly kowtowed to Zhuowen and begged for mercy. Young Master Warrelis, please spare my life. This lowly one did not mean to offend you. Please forgive this lowly one. I will kowtow to you. After saying that, the black-armored cultivator kowtowed to Zhuowen, causing his forehead to bleed. Fart. Suddenly, the black-armored cultivator's movements stiffened. A pitch-black spear pierced through his chest, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The black spear spun and the cultivator in black armor spat out a mouthful of blood before exploding into a blood mist. Zhuowen waved his sleeves and blocked the splattering blood as he looked indifferently at Liu Wuqi, who was standing in front of him with a spear. Liu Wuqi smiled. This person didn't know the rules and actually offended you, young Master Warrelis. Now that I've killed him, I wonder if you've vented your anger. It's all right. Zhuowen replied indifferently. Liu Wuqi's smile deepened. Then, about what happened earlier on, young Master Warrelis, what do you think? Go ahead and ask, but you must know that these three women are very important cultivation furnaces for this young master. If anything happens to them, I don't mind reporting this matter back to Carefree Palace, saying that your god Liu is looking down on our Carefree Palace, Zhuowen said indifferently. Liu Wuqi frowned slightly and could only smile politely. Young master, don't worry. Who would dare to touch your things? I'm just asking a question. Zhuowen nodded and no longer spoke. Liu Wuqi looked at Yun Chuyu and the other two and asked, the three of you are very lucky to have young Master Warrelis backing you up, so I will not do anything to you. However, I have a question for you now, and I hope you can answer it properly. As he spoke, Liu Wuqi didn't wait for the three women to answer and continued, I heard from others that you have two companions who entered the god Liu with you. Where are the other two? Who would have thought that the three women would be at a loss? They shook their heads and said, after we followed young master, we don't know their whereabouts. As for where they are, we don't know either. Liu Wuqi frowned slightly. He glanced at young Master Warrelis by the side and nodded. Since that's the case, then this Liu will be rude. As he spoke, Liu Wuqi led his subordinates and quickly left the deck. Zhuowen looked at Liu Wuqi's departing figure and frowned slightly. He had a feeling that things weren't that simple. Liu Wuqi's younger brother was dead, so how could he let the matter go so easily? Moreover, Zhuowen felt that Liu Wuqi was beginning to suspect him. Inside the dimly lit flying ship, Liu Wuqi sat quietly with a cold gaze. Behind him stood two people. Their auras were like dragons and were exceptionally terrifying. My lord, there's something wrong with young Master Warrelis. Before young Master died, he came into contact with young Master Warrelis. If it weren't for young Master Warrelis wouldn't have captured those 3 female cultivators so easily, one of them said in a deep voice. Do you want us to kill him in secret? After all, we haven't reached the infinite magnetic sea yet, the other person said with a murderous aura. Liu Wuqi snorted coldly and said, do the two of you want the god Liu to be finished? If we kill young Master Warrelis on the flying ship, wouldn't it be telling Carefree Palace that we killed him? Although young Master Warrelis is suspicious, it's not enough to kill him. Let's observe him for a while first. In the following period of time, Zhuowen spent almost all his time cultivating in the cabin. Occasionally, he would go out for a stroll or chat with Fang Zhen. With the many resources of the mystic mirage sect on him, coupled with his almost extravagant consumption of resources, Zhuowen's cultivation speed was extremely fast. Very soon, he stabilized the second step of the illusory sky realm. The flying ship flew in the starry sky for a full 3 years before arriving at the infinite magnetic sea. Although the infinite magnetic sea wasn't very far, the extreme west was filled with powerful magnetic fields. Although the flying ship had the ability to distinguish directions, it still needed time. Therefore, the flying ship flew and stopped during the flight, mainly to confirm the direction. It was because of this reason that the flying ship took 3 years to arrive at the infinite magnetic sea. In 3 years, Zhuowen's cultivation had already reached the second step of the illusory sky realm. Ever since coming out of the Tower of Hanno, Zhuowen could clearly feel that his cultivation speed was faster than before. After all, it hadn't been long since he reached the first step of the Void Sky Realm, but he had already reached the second step of the Void Sky Realm. Now, only 3 years had passed, and he was only 1 step away from the third step. From this, it could be seen that the Tower of Haina had indeed transformed Zhuowen, but Zhuowen did not notice it. After all, this change was subtle and not so obvious. After leaving God Liu, Zhuowen planned to find a place to cultivate in seclusion and break through to the third level of the virtual sky before going out to enter the waning moons. After all, the yin, yang, waxing, and Q formation were not a good place to be. Naturally, he had to be fully prepared. Moreover, the black-clothed Zhuowen had already broken through to true god of 2 disasters. Due to the large amount of disaster crystals on him, the black-clothed Zhuowen could already survive the fire. However, it wasn't suitable on the Lu god, so Zhuowen had been suppressing it. This caused the black-clothed Zhuowen to accumulate more and more fires. He had already accumulated 5 fires. For the black-clothed Zhuowen, the 5 fires occurring at the same time was quite a challenge. However, Zhuowen wasn't worried. The ice lotus that he had obtained from Yu Wuxi was chilly. With that item, Zhuowen wasn't afraid of fire. Moreover, Zhuowen felt that once he became real god of extreme fire, he wouldn't be afraid of the chilly air that the ice lotus emitted. By then, he would be able to study the use of the ice lotus. We have arrived at Dub City in the Magneto Sea. This is the final stop. All passengers may disembark. A solemn voice could be heard from every cabin and it reverberated in everyone's ears. We should go, Zhuowen said and left the cabin with the 3 ladies. As for Ren Yonggan, he was kept in the spiritual ring by Zhuowen. As for whether Ren Yonggan would stay or go, Zhuowen planned to ask him after they disembarked from the spaceship. Then, the Lu god stopped at Dub City. It was a famous big city in the Magneto Sea. There were countless spaceships and there were many spaceships that left the westernmost land. As long as Ren Yonggan bought a ticket, he could leave the westernmost land and return to the star area. Of course, apart from spaceships, there was also an ancient teleportation formation. However, it was unknown if the teleportation formation in the star area had been unsealed. If it had been unsealed, Ren Yonggan could definitely use the teleportation formation to return to the star area. Wu Yu, Dub City isn't far from Xiantian Valley. Do you want to go to Xiantian Valley? After leaving the cabin, Fang Zhen asked Zhuowen enthusiastically. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Brother Fang, I am in a hurry to return. Hence, I won't be going. I will visit again next time when I have time." Seeing that Zhuowen had rejected him, Fang Zhen looked disappointed and said, "If that's the case, it's fine. You must visit me next time. I will definitely treat you well." "No problem," Zhuowen said and took the lead to get off the Lu God, disappearing into the crowd. However, after Zhuowen got off the ship, two figures followed him silently. Most cultivators did not notice them at all. Zhuowen had a map of Dub City, so he would not get lost here. Dub City was called a city, but it was actually a huge meteorite. However, many cultivators had built Dub City on this meteorite. Zhuowen walked silently, but the corners of his mouth revealed a mocking smile. Soon after, he arrived at the most luxurious inn in Dub City. He booked 4 rooms and paid for 3 years' worth of rooms. Then, he went upstairs in a leisurely manner. Flourishing Tower? The 2 black-clothed cultivators following him frowned at the same time. Flourishing Tower was the best inn in Dub City. It had a strong background and was said to be inextricably linked to the city lord of Dub City. No one in Dub City dared to cause trouble in Flourishing Tower. "What should we do?" one of the black-clothed cultivators asked in a deep voice. "You go back and report to the captain first. I'll continue to keep an eye on this place. It's best if we kill this kid without anyone knowing. Then, we'll capture the 3 female cultivators and torture them. Young Master's death is definitely related to them," another cultivator said. The black-clothed cultivator nodded and disappeared. Zhuowen went into seclusion for another 3 years. On this day, he suddenly opened his eyes and entered Devao's inner world to release the huge illusory sky bridge. Zhuowen stepped on the first 2 steps of the illusory sky bridge. His eyes shone brightly like never before as he stepped on the 3rd step. This time, he was confident that he could enter the 3rd step. Boom, boom, boom. The 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge produced a rolling hurricane that swept up Zhuowen's sleeves. "Step over it." Zhuowen's eyes shone brighter and brighter. His bones creaked and his feet exploded like thunder. Finally, he stepped on the 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge. Zhuowen's aura had completely transformed. His essence, energy, and spirit had reached an unprecedented state. "My main body seems to be much stronger than before." After reaching the 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He suddenly felt that his strength was much stronger than an ordinary 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge. He could feel that this strength was not due to the power of Tao intent, but the strength of the essence of his body. He remembered that he was not this strong in the past. Tower of Hanno? Zhuowen thought of the Tower of Hanno. It was said that the Tower of Hanno could change one's body, but Zhuowen did not feel anything after coming out of the Tower of Hanno. However, as his cultivation continued to rise, he found that his strength was different from the others. Zhuowen knew that his main body did not have much of an advantage, but after going through the Tower of Hanno, he could feel that his main body's 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge was enough to fight against a 5th step of the illusory sky bridge. If he cooperated with the black-clothed Zhuowen, even the 6th step of the illusory sky bridge would be defeated. As for the 7th step of the illusory sky bridge, it was a little difficult. When he killed the 7th step of the illusory sky bridge, it was because Xiao He had used all of the Thunderfire Sword and injured the elder to the point of unconsciousness. Chapter 2074. 10 Fires. Zhuowen turned to look at the black-clothed Zhuowen on the other side of the room. At this moment, the black-clothed Zhuowen did not have many calamity crystals left. In 3 years, the The black-clothed Zhuowen had crazily absorbed the calamity crystals. Originally, he had accumulated 6 fires, but now, he had accumulated 10 fires. As long as Zhuowen was willing, he could immediately make the black-clothed Zhuowen start to cross the fires. "It's time to go out," Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, but his eyes were cold. Zhuowen's soul was extremely powerful. In these 3 years, not only did the cultivator who followed him not leave, he even called for more and more helpers, almost covering the outside of the flourishing building with spies. As long as he, Zhuowen, went out, he would be completely discovered by these spies. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth was full of a sneer. Even if he did not say it, he knew the origin of these cultivators. They were probably sent by Liu Wuqi on the god of Lu. After sending a message to Yin Bingyun, Ren Yonggan, and the other 3, Zhuowen swaggered out of the flourishing building and rushed towards the outskirts of Dub City. The moment Zhuowen appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the spies around the flourishing building. Then, these spies passed the news to Liu Wuqi, who was still drinking not far away. Ever since Liu Wuqi stopped the god of Lu in Dub City, he did not set sail again and could be considered to have been completely shelved. Ever since he suspected that his brother was killed by this young master Wu Yu, he could not sleep and eat in peace. He could not wait to kill this young master Wu Yu immediately and offer sacrifices to his brother's soul in heaven. Although young master Wu Yu was the young master of Carefree Palace, he had killed young master Wu Yu and completely became enemies with Carefree Palace. However, he would definitely avenge his son's death. This time, he wanted to ask clearly. If this young master Wu Yu admitted to being the murderer, he would give him a quick death. If he did not admit it, he would directly search his soul. If he found out that he was lying, he would make this young master Wu Yu suffer a fate worse than death. Young master Wu Yu left the flourishing building. "Sir, should we follow him?" There were 2 cultivators seated beside Liu Wuqi. They were none other than the 2 cultivators who had followed Zhuowen back then. These 2 people's cultivations were both very powerful. One of them was at Void Sky 4 steps, while the other was at Void Sky 5 steps. They were both powerful experts. "Go." A dangerous glint flashed in Liu Wuqi's eyes. He got up and led the 2 people out of the restaurant. After arriving in the wilderness, Zhuowen purposely chose a remote corner and threw out several formation discs in a steep canyon, setting up a chain of trap and kill arrays. Zhuowen's mastery of formations was not slow either, especially in the battle at the Dark Mirage sect. He had witnessed the various formations of the Dark Mirage sect, which had given him great inspiration. His mastery of formations had also unknowingly risen to the 5th level. After setting up the trapping array, Liu Wuqi had already arrived here with 2 personal experts. "Young Master Warrelis, from the looks of it, you already knew that we were following you." Liu Wuqi placed his hands behind his back and surveyed the surroundings. Noticing that there was no one around, he knew that this young Master Warrelis had purposely lured them here. Zhuowen looked at Liu Wuqi indifferently. "From the looks of it, you've long suspected me." Liu Wuqi smiled coldly. "My younger brother came into contact with you before he died. Then, he died suddenly not long after. Tell me, aren't you suspicious? Don't tell me you want to go against Carefree Palace. Aren't you afraid that Carefree Palace will find trouble with you after you kill me?" Zhuowen remained calm. But Liu Wuqi laughed loudly and said, "After I kill you, I'll drive the god Lu and leave the myriad magnetic sea, far away from the land of the far west. I don't believe that Carefree Palace can find me." At this point, Liu Wuqi's gaze turned cold as he said to the 2 people beside him, "Take this person down. Don't kill him yet. I still want to search his soul. I want to see how he killed my younger brother." The 2 cultivators nodded and immediately rushed towards Zhuowen with a sinister smile. "You're really going to attack?" Zhuowen's face turned pale as cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He kept retreating until he reached the canyon. The 2 cultivators looked at the cowering Zhuowen with disdain, and a cold smile appeared on their faces as they said, "You really are a coward. You actually dared to lure us out like this. You're really courting death." With that, the 2 cultivators instantly entered the canyon. Unfortunately, the moment they entered the canyon, Zhuowen activated the trap and kill array that he had prepared beforehand. Although the trap and kill array that Zhuowen had set up could not kill the two of them, it could at least trap them completely. In the outside world, Liu Wuqi's gaze instantly turned serious. He snorted coldly and headed towards the canyon. However, a sturdy black figure blocked Liu Wuqi's path. Looking at the demonic cultivator with blurry facial features and rolling demonic fog, Liu Wuqi frowned slightly. He realized that this demonic cultivator clearly did not have the aura of the illusory sky bridge, but he actually gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Bang! 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 With this delay, the trap and kill array in the canyon gradually dissipated. Then, two corpses were thrown over. Liu Wuqi retreated dozens of meters. Divine power surged from his hands as he caught the two corpses in midair. Then, he was shocked to discover that the two corpses were his two subordinates. Whoosh! The moment Liu Wuqi caught his two subordinates, the black-clothed Zhuowen took a step forward and threw a punch. Terrifying lightning turned into a net and wrapped around Liu Wuqi. Liu Wuqi's gaze was cold. Although he was surprised that young Master Warrelis had dealt with his subordinates so easily, he did not panic in the slightest. Liu Wuqi took out a black spear from his body and fiercely swung it. The terrifying energy transformed into a huge tiger and blasted towards the lightning net. However, what surprised Liu Wuqi was that the lightning net was extremely strange. When it blasted onto the spear, it wrapped around the surface of the spear like maggots on a corpse. Disperse! Liu Wuqi shook his right hand and an invisible wave spread to the surface of the black spear. Instantly, the lightning wrapped around the black spear was dispersed. Whoosh! After the lightning on the surface of the black spear was dispersed, Liu Wuqi's spear momentum did not change. Its speed was as fast as light as it swept towards the Zhuowen's vital points. The black-clothed Zhuowen grinned. The aura on his body suddenly became much more terrifying. Then, flames spread out from his body. Boom! 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 The void beneath the black-clothed Zhuowen's feet cracked open 10 huge fire pits. Each fire pit was about a dozen feet in size. Inside the pits were raging black flames that soared into the sky and enveloped the black-clothed Zhuowen. Because the 10 fire pits spread out too quickly, Liu Wuqi, who was the closest to the black-clothed Zhuowen, was also caught in the sea of flames spewing out from the fire pits. What a terrifying fire! The demonic fog on the black-clothed Zhuowen's body was burned clean by the flames, revealing his original appearance. At this moment, he realized how terrifying these 10 fires were. Even with the black-clothed Zhuowen's super-strong body, he felt as if he was being roasted and melted by these 10 fires. Generally speaking, the fires of a double calamity true god wouldn't be so terrifying. Even if 10 fires were stacked together, it still wouldn't be so terrifying. However, it was different for the Zhuowen. Devour himself was already heaven-defying. Moreover, Devour, who had become true god Extreme Thunder, was even more heaven-defying. That was why the rules of the starry sky sent down such a terrifying fire. Even a void sky cultivator might not be able to withstand such a terrifying fire. This won't do. I need the help of that ice lotus. Otherwise, even Devour would be seriously injured after passing through the fire. Zhuowen's main body looked at the terrifying fire that almost covered half the sky in shock. He immediately took out the ice lotus from his spirit ring and threw it to the black-clothed Zhuowen, who was still trapped in the fire. The moment the black-clothed Zhuowen caught the ice lotus, a cold air lingered around him, causing the surrounding flames to recede slightly. The black-clothed Zhuowen didn't dare to release the lightning and fire energy on the surface of the ice lotus. After all, even he couldn't control this ice lotus. If he released it, wouldn't he be frozen into an ice sculpture after the fire passed? Sitting cross-legged beside the ice lotus, the black-clothed Zhuowen barely managed to resist the surrounding flames with the help of the ice lotus. At the same time, he began to temper his physique. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The fire burned in the void for 10 days, almost causing the surrounding space to collapse. Finally, the fire completely dissipated. The black-clothed Zhuowen took a step forward. The fire energy on his body was extremely dense. Of course, it was much denser than an ordinary double calamity true god. Now, the black-clothed Zhuowen's main body was sure that even if the black-clothed Zhuowen didn't reveal his true body, his fighting power should be comparable to a Void Sky fifth-step cultivator. After the black-clothed Zhuowen observed his body, his gaze fell on the vacuum area that had collapsed due to the fire. His eyes slowly narrowed. Back then, Liu Wuqi should have been surrounded by the fire, but now, there was no trace of him. Could Liu Wuqi have been burned to death? The black-clothed Zhuowen's main body muttered softly. Then, he landed in the vacuum area. Whoosh! The moment he landed in the vacuum area, a spear light instantly swept over and pointed at the center of the black-clothed Zhuowen's forehead. The black-clothed Zhuowen immediately spread his torch dragon wings and dodged the spear light in the nick of time. Then, the purple sword in his right hand executed sword swimming great void and heavily slashed the figure behind the spear light. Bang! That figure fell to the ground in an extremely sorry state. Then, he straightened his body and fled into the distance. However, this figure didn't manage to escape far before he was intercepted by the black-clothed Zhuowen, who fiercely punched him back. Zhuowen carefully sized up the figure that was struggling to get up. He saw that this person's entire body was charred black and his face couldn't be seen clearly. Zhuowen knew that this person should be Liu Wuqi. Although Liu Wuqi didn't die, his injuries were very serious. If it were a fire caused by an ordinary true god 2 disasters, a Void Sky cultivator would naturally disdain it. However, the black-clothed Zhuowen was true god Extreme Thunder and his true body was the powerful Devour race in the starry sky. When true god Extreme Thunder advanced to a true god 2 disasters, the fire he produced was very terrifying. Moreover, there were 10 fires superimposed. That power wasn't something an ordinary Void Sky cultivator could resist. Even if it was Liu Wuqi, if he didn't rely on his powerful divine power to protect himself, he would have lost his life. Liu Wuqi still wanted to run, but unfortunately, the black-clothed Zhuowen, who had survived 10 fires, easily killed him. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.